The diamond sparkled mockingly as my sister twirled her hand in the sunlight streaming through our parents' living room window. That's when I first felt something was terribly wrong. I'm Brinley, and I've spent 29 years being the family's afterthought. The less pretty one, the less successful one, the less everything compared to my perfect sister Amelia. But I thought I'd finally broken free from her shadow when Riker proposed to me 6 months ago. It's just so romantic, Amelia gushed, still admiring her hand. The way he surprised me at the gallery opening last night. I mean, who proposes with their sister's old engagement ring? My stomach dropped. What are you talking about? She blinked those wide, innocent eyes at me. Oh, didn't Riker tell you? He said you two had talked it through and decided to call things off. That you agreed the ring would be perfect for me instead. He what? My voice came out as a whisper. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking as I pulled up Riker's number. Straight to voicemail. Don't be dramatic, Brinley, my mother called from the kitchen. You know your sister and Riker have always had a special connection. Remember when they dated in college? Of course I remembered. Amelia had dated him first, then dumped him when a richer prospect came along. I'd helped pick up the pieces, and over 3 years, friendship had blossomed into love. Or so I'd thought. Where's my ring, Amelia? I demanded, standing up. The one that was in my jewelry box this morning? She shrugged, that familiar smirk playing at her lips. Like I said, Riker gave it to me. Maybe check your messages? I'm sure he tried to explain everything. I ran upstairs to my old bedroom, where I'd been staying while apartment hunting. My jewelry box sat open on the dresser, empty except for a folded note in Riker's handwriting. I'm sorry. Amelia and I realized we never got over each other. You'll understand someday. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend, Piper. Girl, you need to check Instagram right now. There it was, a perfectly staged photo of Amelia and Riker kissing in front of a wall of roses, my ring prominent on her finger. The caption read, "When you finally get your happily ever after with your soulmate, use second chance romance." I barely made it to the bathroom before throwing up. Honey? My mother's voice drifted up the stairs. Amelia's wondering if you'll help with the wedding planning. She says you have such good taste in centerpieces. I slumped against the cool tile wall, remembering all the times Amelia had taken what was mine. My favorite toys as kids, my prom date, my dream college. She transferred there after I got accepted. But this was different. This wasn't just about Riker. Something felt off about how desperately she'd wanted this specific ring. My phone buzzed again. An unknown number. Ms. Hayes, this is Desmond O'Connor, your grandmother's attorney. We need to discuss the ring immediately. There are things you don't know. What things? I typed back. Not over text. Meet me tomorrow, 10 a.m., my office. And whatever you do, don't let your sister leave the country with that ring. I heard Amelia's laugh floating up from downstairs, followed by the sound of our mother fawning over wedding magazines. The familiar rage and helplessness started to rise, but something else was there too. A spark of determination I'd never felt before. I pulled up Piper's number. I need your help, I said when she answered. Remember how you always said karma would catch up with Amelia someday? I think it's finally happening. I'm on my way, Piper replied without hesitation. And Brinley, bring your grandmother's old diary, the one Amelia's been trying to get her hands on for years. I have a feeling we're going to need it. I hung up and walked to my closet, pulling out the worn leather journal I'd kept hidden since Gran's funeral. Amelia's voice carried up again, now discussing honeymoon destinations with our mother. Let her plan. Let her think she'd won again. For the first time in my life, I felt something shifting inside me. This wasn't going to be like all the other times I'd stepped aside to keep the peace. This time, I was going to fight back. I just didn't know yet how much that fight would change everything. The church bells seemed to mock me as I slipped into the back pew. 3 weeks. That's all it took for my sister to plan the perfect wedding, while I sat in the audience wearing a dress I'd originally bought for my own rehearsal dinner. You're stronger than I'd be, Piper whispered, squeezing my hand. I still think we should tell everyone what we found in your grandmother's diary. I shook my head slightly. Not yet. Desmond says timing is everything. The wedding march began, and Amelia floated down the aisle in what I recognized as a modified version of our grandmother's dress, another thing she'd taken without asking. But it was the ring on her finger that made my heart race, the ring that, according to Desmond, contained more than just diamonds. Dearly beloved, the priest began, but I was watching Riker's face. He wasn't looking at Amelia with love. He was scanning the crowd, his expression more calculating than adoring. When his eyes met mine, he quickly looked away. "Did you see that?" Piper murmured. Before I could respond, someone slipped into the pew beside me. "Ms. Hayes," Desmond whispered, "we have confirmation. They're planning to leave for their honeymoon tonight, private jet to Switzerland." "Switzerland?" I hissed. But they told everyone they were going to Hawaii. Because Switzerland has certain banking laws that would make it very convenient to access hidden accounts. Desmond passed me a folder. "Your grandmother was more clever than anyone knew. That ring contains coordinates to something that could change everything. If anyone has any reason these two should not be wed," the priest's voice rang out, "speak now or forever hold your peace." I gripped the folder tightly, thinking of all the times I'd held my peace, all the times I'd watched Amelia take and take while our mother applauded her nerve. The moment passed. They exchanged vows. Riker's hands shook as he slipped a second band onto Amelia's finger to join my grandmother's ring. At the reception, I watched them work the room like professionals. Amelia, touching her ring constantly. Riker, having intense whispered conversations with groomsmen I'd never seen before today. "Brinley," Amelia's voice cut through my observations. "Come take a photo with your favorite sister." I plastered on a smile and moved toward her. As she pulled me close, she whispered, "I know you're up to something, but you've already lost, just like always." "Smile," the photographer called. I did smile, thinking of the documents in Desmond's folder. "You know, Amelia, I've been meaning to ask, did you ever wonder why Gran left me her diary but gave you nothing?" Her grip on my arm tightened painfully. "What are you talking about?" "Oh, just something interesting I read about the family estate in Switzerland, the one you think nobody knows about." The color drained from her face. "You're lying. There's nothing." "Ladies!" Our mother appeared, champagne in hand. "Amelia, darling, it's time for the father-daughter dance." As Amelia was whisked away, Piper appeared at my elbow. "The documents are copied and filed. Desmond's contact at the airport is ready. Should I call them?" I watched Amelia dance, her ring catching the light. "Not yet. Let them get on that plane thinking they've won. Let them find out mid-flight that their Swiss accounts are frozen and their little scheme is about to blow up in their faces." "You're scary when you're plotting revenge," Piper grinned. "I love it." The reception wound down. I hugged Amelia goodbye, whispering, "Enjoy Switzerland, sis." The flash of panic in her eyes was worth every second of the past 3 weeks. As their car pulled away, Desmond approached with his phone out. "Your grandmother's estate lawyer in Geneva is ready. Once they land, everything will be in place. Are you sure you want to go through with this?" I thought of the diary entries I'd read, of our grandmother's careful plans to protect the family legacy from those who would abuse it, of how she'd watched Amelia's behavior over the years and made her choice about who to trust. "They thought I was the weak one," I said, watching the taillights disappear. "The quiet one who would just accept whatever happened. They never wondered why Gran spent so much time teaching me about the estate management, about investments, about building something meaningful. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Plane tracking activated. Will alert when they cross into Swiss airspace. Now we wait, Piper said, linking her arm through mine. How long until they realize that ring is more than just jewelry? I smiled, thinking of the microscopic USB drive hidden in the setting. Oh, I'd say somewhere over the Atlantic, they'll figure it out. And by then, it'll be too late. They've just reached cruising altitude, Piper announced, watching the flight tracker on her laptop. We'd set up a command center of sorts in my apartment, with Desmond pacing by the window and his assistant monitoring various feeds. My phone rang, a video call from Amelia. I put it on speaker. "What did you do?" she snarled, her face illuminated by the airplane's dim lighting. "Our cards were just declined at the airport lounge." "Really? How embarrassing for you." I kept my voice light. "Have you taken a close look at that ring yet?" Riker's face appeared next to hers. "Brinley, whatever game you're playing." "Oh, like the game where you stole my ring and married my sister? That kind of game?" Amelia's face contorted. "The ring. What's wrong with the ring?" "Maybe you should ask Gran's Swiss lawyer when you land. I'm sure he'll be very interested in meeting you." The video shook as Amelia presumably yanked the ring off her finger. "Riker, look at this. There's something in the setting." I watched their faces as realization dawned. The tiny seam in the platinum band, the hidden compartment that had been there all along. "Impossible," Riker muttered. "The documents were supposed to be in the safe?" I finished for him. "The one you two broke into last month? Gran was smarter than that. She knew exactly who would try to steal her legacy." Amelia's face went from angry to pleading. "Brinley, please, you don't understand. We needed. What I understand is that you both thought you could access Gran's Swiss accounts if you had this ring. What you didn't know is that she left everything to me 6 months ago. The estate, the accounts, all of it." "That's not possible," Amelia shrieked. "Mother said I was getting the inheritance." Desmond stepped into frame. "Actually, Miss Hayes, your grandmother was quite clear. The estate goes to Brinley, along with full control of the family's charitable foundation." The plane's captain's voice crackled in the background, announcing turbulence. Amelia ignored it. "We're already over the ocean," she hissed. "You can't stop us from reaching Switzerland." "True," I agreed, "but I can make sure there's nothing left for you when you get there. Check your email, sis." I watched as she fumbled with her phone, color draining from her face as she read the legal documents we'd just sent. "This is... You're transferring everything to a trust?" Her voice cracked. "You can't..." "Already done. As of 10 minutes ago, the estate is part of a charitable foundation dedicated to helping women rebuild their lives after betrayal." Poetic, don't you think? Riker grabbed the phone. "Listen to me. We can work something out. Split the inheritance." "Like you split your vows between sisters?" Piper cut in. "Not happening." The turbulence warning dinged again. I could see panic setting in as they realized their carefully planned scheme was unraveling. "What are we supposed to do now?" Amelia demanded. "Just turn around?" "That's exactly what you're going to do," Desmond stated. "Unless you'd like the Swiss authorities to meet you at the gate. I hear they take financial fraud quite seriously." My phone buzzed with another call. The estate's caretaker in Geneva. I switched over briefly to confirm everything was secured, then returned to Amelia's increasingly desperate face. "You've ruined everything," she sobbed. "Mother will never forgive you." "Funny, I was just thinking the same about you." I leaned closer to the camera. "By the way, I've arranged for a car to pick you up when you land. It'll take you straight to your new apartment." "What new apartment?" "The one I found for you in that charming little suburb you always made fun of. Don't worry, I paid for 3 months' rent. Should give you time to find jobs. Jobs? Riker looked like he might be sick. Well, you didn't think I'd let you keep living in the condo Gran owned, did you? Consider your eviction notice served. The captain's voice came through again, announcing they were turning back due to a technical issue. I saw Riker's face fall as he realized we'd thought of everything. This isn't over, Amelia warned, but her voice wavered. Actually, it is. But hey, at least you still have each other, right? Isn't that what you said love was all about? I ended the call and turned to find Piper grinning and Desmond nodding approvingly. Flights officially diverted, his assistant confirmed. They'll be back in 5 hours. My phone lit up with a message from the Geneva lawyer. Estate secured, foundation paperwork processed, ready to begin renovations whenever you are. I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in years. Well, I said, picking up Gran's diary, I guess it's time to start planning how to turn a centuries-old estate into a modern sanctuary. And what about them? Piper asked, nodding at my phone where Amelia's desperate face had been moments before. Let them experience what it's like to start from nothing. Maybe they'll learn something. But from the dozen missed calls already lighting up my screen, I knew this was far from over. Your sister and Riker just got served with the fraud papers, Desmond announced, striding into my new office at the estate's management building. You should have seen their faces when they realized the depth of their financial mess. I looked up from the renovation plans spread across my desk. How bad is it? They took out loans using forged documents from your grandmother's estate as collateral. The banks aren't happy. He dropped a thick folder on my desk. They're facing potential criminal charges unless they can repay everything immediately. Which they can't, Piper chimed in from where she was organizing donor files. Not since we froze their accounts. My phone buzzed. Another message from my mother. Please talk to me. Your sister is devastated. This isn't like you. I switched it off. Has Mara arrived yet? Just pulled up, Piper said, checking the security feed. Want me to show her around? I'll do it. I needed a break from paperwork anyway. Mara was exactly as I remembered her from our brief meeting at a women's business conference, sharp, confident, and radiating competence. She took in the sprawling estate with an appraising eye. So this is where you want to build the sanctuary? She asked as we walked the grounds. The main house has 30 rooms, I explained. We can convert it into temporary housing for women rebuilding their lives after betrayal or abuse. The East Wing will be for counseling and legal services. And you're sure about using your own story in the marketing? Before I could answer, a commotion erupted at the front gate. Amelia's voice carried across the lawn, shrill and demanding. Let me in. This is my family's property. I nodded to security to let her through. She stormed up the path, mascara streaked down her face, clutching a stack of papers. Is this some kind of joke? She thrust the documents at me. They're saying we owe millions. They're threatening to arrest Riker. Fraud tends to have consequences, I replied calmly. Mara watched with interest as Amelia's face reddened. You have to help us, she pleaded. Mother can't even look at me now that everyone knows what we did. Riker's firm put him on leave. We have nothing. Funny how that feels, isn't it? I'm your sister. You were my sister when you stole my fiancé, when you took Gran's ring, when you tried to steal her estate. I gestured to the building behind us. But look what came of it. This place will help hundreds of women now. Mara stepped forward. Ms. Hayes, I work with domestic violence survivors. Would you like me to connect you with some resources? Amelia recoiled. I'm not some charity case. Brinley, please, we can work something out. Actually, we can. I pulled out a contract I'd had prepared. Sign over any remaining claim to Gran's estate, agree to attend therapy, and get a job. A real one, not another position at Mother's Charity. Do that, and I'll help handle the legal fees. You're blackmailing me? I'm offering you a chance to become a better person, more than you ever gave me. Her hands shook as she stared at the contract. And if I refuse, then I let the fraud investigation run its course. Your choice. Just then, Piper emerged from the building. Brinley, the contractor needs to review the plans for the counseling center, and that reporter is here for the interview about the foundation. Amelia's eyes widened. Reporter? Jeremy from the Daily Post, I confirmed. He's very interested in doing a feature story about turning a family betrayal into a force for good. You wouldn't dare. Watch me. I turned to Mara. Shall we continue the tour? I'd love your input on the trauma recovery spaces. Amelia grabbed my arm. Wait, I'll sign, but I need time to think about the other conditions. You have 24 hours. I handed her my card. My lawyer's number is on there. Call when you're ready to face reality. As she walked away, shoulders slumped, Mara nodded approvingly. You're handling this better than most would. I had a good teacher, I said, thinking of Grand's diary entries about forgiveness and growth. Sometimes people need to lose everything to find their way. Speaking of finding ways, Piper called out, Jeremy's asking if you're ready to tell your story. Are you sure you want to go public with all of this? I looked at the estate, imagining it filled with women reclaiming their lives. Thought of all the others out there who needed to know they weren't alone. Yes, I said firmly. It's time everyone knew exactly what happened here and what's about to happen next. Mara smiled. Well then, let's make sure we give them something worth talking about. We walked back toward the building, leaving Amelia's diminishing figure behind us. The weight of her betrayal was finally lifting, replaced by something stronger, purpose. The first residents arrive tomorrow, I told Jeremy as he set up his recording equipment in the newly renovated main hall. 6 women, all starting over after different types of betrayal. And your sister? He asked, adjusting his microphone. Has she met your conditions? Before I could answer, Piper burst in. Brinley, you need to see this. Riker's outside. I followed her to the security monitors. Sure enough, there he was, pacing by the front gate in an ill-fitting suit that had clearly seen better days. Should I call security? Mara asked, appearing beside us. No, I'll handle this. I straightened my jacket and headed outside, aware of Jeremy trailing behind with his camera. Riker looked worse than I'd expected. Dark circles under his eyes, unshaven, his former polished appearance gone. You look terrible, I said, stopping a few feet away. Yeah, well, losing your job and facing criminal charges will do that. He ran a hand through his unkempt hair. Amelia left me. Karma's interesting that way. I deserve that. He pulled out a wrinkled envelope. I came to give you this. It's a full confession about the fraud scheme, how we planned it, when we started forging documents, everything. I took the envelope but didn't open it. Why now? Because Amelia's gone to stay with your mother in Florida, claiming I forced her into everything. She's throwing me under the bus to save herself. He laughed bitterly. Guess I should have seen that coming. Jeremy stepped forward. Mr. Brooks, would you be willing to go on record about this? Riker noticed the camera for the first time. Is this some kind of setup? No, I said. This is karma giving you a choice. Tell the truth now, or let Amelia control the narrative, your decision. Just then, a van pulled up to the gates, our first residents arriving early. I watched as 6 women stepped out, each carrying small bags containing whatever they'd managed to save from their previous lives. Are those, Riker trailed off, women who lost everything because of men like you? Yes. I nodded to Mara, who went to greet them. But they're not victims anymore. They're survivors. One of the women looked our way, and I saw Riker flinch at the recognition in her eyes. Sarah, he whispered. Your former secretary, I confirmed. The one you fired after she rejected your advances. She's our new administrative director. Sarah walked over, head high. Hello, Riker. You're looking different. He took a step back. I should go. Actually, Jeremy interrupted, I think these ladies might have something to say about men who abuse their power. Care to stick around for that interview? Riker's face paled. Brinley, please. I know I hurt you. This isn't about me anymore. I gestured to the estate. This is about every woman who's been betrayed, manipulated, or discarded. Your confession can help us show others they're not alone. Sarah crossed her arms. I'll go first, if you're ready, Jeremy. One by one, the other women joined us, forming a semicircle around Riker. Each had a story. Each had lost something, jobs, homes, dignity, and each was here to reclaim their power. Okay, Riker said quietly. I'll tell everything, but not for you, Brinley, for them. He nodded toward the women. Because they deserve the truth. 4 hours later, I watched the last interview wrap up. Riker had spoken for nearly an hour, detailing not just our story, but years of misconduct. Jeremy was practically glowing at the material. This will make one hell of a story, he said, packing up his equipment. The estate, the revenge, the transformation into something bigger. It's perfect. Piper handed me a tissue. I hadn't realized I was crying until then. Happy tears? She asked. Relieved tears. I watched as Sarah showed the other women to their rooms. For the first time, I feel like losing everything was worth it. Look what we built from the ashes. My phone buzzed. A text from Amelia. Saw Riker at the estate. Mother says you're trying to destroy our family name. I typed back, no, I'm rebuilding it into something worthwhile. You're welcome to be part of that if you're ready to change. The contractor finished the east wing, Mara reported, joining us. We can start the support groups next week. Through the windows, I could see the women exploring their new home, some already talking and laughing together. In just hours, they'd formed the kind of supportive bond that Amelia and I never had. Should we tell them about the job training program starting next month? Piper asked. I smiled, watching the sun set behind the estate that had become so much more than just revenge. Let them settle in first. They have time now. We all do. For the first time since this all began, I felt completely at peace with where I'd landed. Sometimes losing everything is just the universe's way of showing you what you're meant to build instead. Breaking news, socialite sisters scandal leads to women's sanctuary. The headline blazed across my tablet screen. Jeremy's article had gone viral overnight, and my phone hadn't stopped ringing since dawn. Good Morning America wants an interview, Piper announced, bursting into my office. And there's a Hollywood producer asking about movie rights. Tell them no. I was watching the security feed where reporters had gathered at the gates. This isn't about fame. Sarah knocked and entered, looking concerned. Amelia's trending on Twitter, not in a good way. I pulled up social media and winced. The internet had latched onto Riker's confession, particularly the parts about Amelia's history of manipulation. Old acquaintances were coming forward with their own stories. Your mother's here, Mara's voice crackled through the intercom. She's quite upset. Send her up. My mother burst in moments later, waving a newspaper. How could you, exposing our family like this? Amelia's been hospitalized for anxiety. Maybe she should have thought about consequences before stealing my fiancé and committing fraud. I replied calmly. She's your sister. And I was her sister when she betrayed me. I gestured to the women visible through my office window, attending their morning support group. Look at what came from that betrayal. Something good. Good? She slapped the newspaper down. Our family's reputation is ruined. No, it's being redefined. Gran would be proud. Your grandmother? She laughed bitterly. She'd be horrified at this publicity. Actually, Desmond said, entering with a folder, I have evidence suggesting otherwise. He pulled out a letter. This was in her safety deposit box to be opened if the estate ever made headlines. I took the letter, recognizing Gran's handwriting. To whoever is reading this, if this letter has been opened, it means someone finally had the courage to expose the truth. Our family's wealth was built by strong women, then nearly destroyed by those who valued appearance over substance. I trust that whoever received my estate has found a way to restore its true purpose, helping others rise from adversity. With love and pride, Eleanor. My mother sank into a chair, face pale. She knew, all this time, she knew everything, Desmond confirmed, including how you and Amelia tried to access the Swiss accounts 3 years ago. A commotion outside drew our attention. Through the window, I saw Riker approaching the gates, surrounded by reporters. What's he doing here? Piper demanded. We watched on the security feed as he faced the cameras. I'm here to make additional statements about my actions and to begin mandatory counseling as part of my plea agreement. The reporters surged forward with questions. Mr. Brooks, is it true you're facing jail time? Did Amelia Hayes orchestrate the fraud? What do you say to other men who abuse their power? Riker looked directly at the nearest camera. I'm here because facing consequences means more than just legal penalties. It means confronting the harm you've caused and working to become better. My mother stood abruptly. This is insanity. I'm calling our family lawyer. Your family lawyer works for me now, I informed her. The entire legal team does. They're helping our residents with their cases. Cases? Workplace harassment, domestic violence, financial abuse. I pulled up our case files. Turns out there are a lot of Amelias and Rikers in the world. We're helping their victims fight back. Sarah stepped forward. Mrs. Hayes, would you like to see what your daughter has actually built here? It's not the scandal you think it is. My mother hesitated, then nodded stiffly. As Sarah led her out, Piper turned to me. The Today Show is calling again. They want to feature our job training program. Tell them they can cover the program itself, but not me. I watched my mother's face change as she saw our residents working, healing, supporting each other. This was never about publicity. Speaking of publicity, Mara entered with her tablet. Amelia just posted online. You might want to see this. It was a video, filmed from what looked like a hospital room. My sister, makeup-free and looking genuinely vulnerable for the first time I could remember, stared into the camera. I've spent my life taking what wasn't mine, she began. It's time I faced that truth. I closed the tablet. Send it to Jeremy. Let him verify if she's sincere. And if she is? Piper asked, looking out at the estate, at the women rebuilding their lives, at my mother finally seeing the truth. I thought about Gran's words about rising from adversity. Then we'll help her rise too, I decided. That's what we do here. Because sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destruction. It's creating something so powerful that even your enemies want to be part of it. The autumn wind rustled through the estate's gardens as I waited for Amelia to arrive. After 3 months of therapy and community service, she'd finally asked to meet face to face. Are you sure about this? Piper asked, adjusting the security cameras. Last time you were alone with her, she stole your ring. She's not the same person anymore. I watched a familiar car approach the gates. Neither am I. Amelia stepped out looking nothing like the polished socialite she'd once been. Simple jeans, minimal makeup, hair pulled back naturally. She carried a cardboard box. The cameras are rolling, Sarah reminded me through my earpiece. Just in case. I met Amelia at the garden bench where Gran used to read to us as children. She set the box down carefully. You look Healthy, I offered. Therapy helps. She managed a small smile. So does working at the women's shelter. Real work, not just charity galas. I heard you're leading support groups now. Turns out I'm good at helping other recovering narcissists. She pushed the box toward me. These belong to you. Inside were photos, jewelry, even childhood toys, things she'd taken from me over the years. At the bottom lay Gran's ring. Riker had it in his apartment, she explained. I got it back before he started his jail time. I lifted the ring, remembering how different everything had been when it was last in my possession. Why now? Because I finally understand what Gran was trying to teach us. Amelia's voice cracked. She left you the estate because you knew how to help people, not just use them. A group of residents walked past, heading to their afternoon classes. Some nodded to me, but several glared at Amelia. They hate me, she observed quietly. They hate what you represented, the person who took advantage of others without consequence. Like I did to you. She wiped her eyes. I saw the latest segment about the sanctuary on TV. 43 women helped in 3 months. 200 more on the waiting list. We're opening a second location next spring. Using the money from my frozen accounts? And Riker's seemed fitting. She nodded, then pulled out an envelope. My therapist helped me write this. It's everything I never said. About why I hurt you, why I was so desperate to have what you had. I don't need, please. She pressed it into my hands. I know it doesn't fix anything, but you deserve to understand. Just then, my mother's voice carried across the garden. Girls, what are you doing out here? She approached cautiously, looking between us. 3 months of seeing the sanctuary's work had softened her, but she still struggled with our new reality. Amelia was just returning some things, I explained. Including my pride, Amelia added. She turned to our mother. Mom, I need to say something. Darling, you don't. I do. You helped make me what I was, always praising my manipulation, rewarding my cruelty. We need to talk about that, in therapy, together. Our mother's face crumpled. I never meant, I know, but meaning well doesn't excuse the damage. Amelia stood. My counselor has openings on Thursday. I watched my mother's internal struggle play across her face before she nodded slowly. Good, Amelia said, because I'm tired of being the person you raised me to be. She turned back to me. And I'm sorry I tried to destroy the person Gran raised you to be. My earpiece crackled. Incoming call from the governor's office, Sarah announced. They want to discuss state funding for expansion. Tell them I'll call back. I studied my sister's face, seeing genuine remorse for the first time. Would you like to see what we've built here? Really see it? I'd like that. She glanced at the ring in my hand. What will you do with it? I slipped it onto my finger, feeling its weight. Keep it as a reminder, not of what I lost, but of what I found. And me? What happens to me now? I thought of Gran's words about rising from adversity. That depends on you. We have a program starting next month, teaching women to recognize toxic patterns in themselves and others. We need peer counselors. You'd trust me with that? Trust is earned, but everyone deserves a chance to earn it. Our mother stepped forward. Both of you deserve better than what I gave you. Then help us do better, I said. The sanctuary's not just for victims, it's for anyone ready to change. Amelia picked up her empty box. I'd like to try, if you'll let me. Thursday. Our mother agreed quietly. We'll start on Thursday. As we walked toward the main building, I felt the weight of years of resentment beginning to lift, not forgotten, but transforming into something else, something that might eventually heal us all. Because sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones who need healing themselves. And now, To present our Humanitarian of the Year award, the announcer's voice echoed through the grand hall. Please welcome Sarah Mitchell, Executive Director of the Hayes Women's Sanctuary. Sarah stepped up to the podium, her confidence radiating through the room. When I first met Brinley, I was a broken woman who'd lost everything. Today, I help run an organization that's transformed hundreds of lives. I sat between Piper and Mara, squeezing their hands as Sarah continued. But this award isn't just for Brinley. It's for every woman who found strength in our sanctuary, including someone who surprised us all. She gestured to the side stage. Please welcome our newest board member, Amelia Hayes. The audience murmured as Amelia approached the podium. Gone was the socialite who'd stolen my ring. In her place stood a woman who'd spent the past several months working tirelessly to earn back trust. My sister taught me that true strength isn't about taking from others, Amelia began. It's about lifting them up. Today, we're announcing the opening of our third sanctuary location, funded entirely by recovered assets from financial abuse cases. I watched our mother in the front row, tears streaming down her face. Weekly therapy had revealed decades of generational trauma we were finally breaking. And speaking of recovery, Amelia continued, we've received a letter from our former brother-in-law, Riker, who's completing his rehabilitation program. She read from the letter, the sanctuary's work has shown me how many lives one person's selfishness can destroy. I'm dedicating my remaining resources to supporting their legal defense fund for women fighting financial abuse. Jeremy, sitting nearby with his camera, leaned over. Still glad you let me tell your story? Look around, I whispered back. The room was filled with sanctuary graduates, many now successful business owners or community leaders themselves. The story told itself. Sarah returned to the microphone. Before we present this award, there's one more announcement. Brinley, would you join us? I walked to the podium, passing familiar faces. There was Mara, who'd helped design our counseling programs. Desmond, who'd turned his entire law practice toward supporting our cause. Piper, my rock through everything. The ring that started all this, I began, holding up my grandmother's ring, contained more than just documents. It held a truth about legacy, about how pain can become purpose. I removed the ring. Today we're melting it down. Its metal will become part of a sculpture for our new building, a phoenix rising from ashes. Because that's what we do here. We rise. Amelia stepped forward with a small torch, and together we held the flame to the ring. As it began to glow, I saw tears in her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered, too quietly for the microphone to catch. I know, I replied, just as softly. That's why we're both here. The metal melted, dripping into a mold held by one of our artists, a domestic violence survivor whose work now sold in galleries. Our mother joined us on stage, holding an old leather book. Your grandmother's diary, she said, handing it to me. It's time everyone heard her words. I opened to the last page and read, to my dearest Brinley, when you find your strength, help others find theirs. That's how we change the world, one restored soul at a time. The audience stood, applauding not just for me, but for every story of transformation in that room. The award, Sarah announced, goes not to an individual, but to the Hayes Women's Sanctuary for showing us that the greatest revenge against darkness is creating light. As I accepted the award, I saw Piper typing on her phone. What are you doing? I asked when I returned to my seat. Confirming our next project. She showed me the screen, an application to turn Riker's seized corporate offices into a women's business incubator. Perfect, I smiled. Ready to help more phoenixes rise? Always, Amelia answered, joining us. But first, someone wants to talk to you. She nodded toward the back of the room, where a young woman stood nervously clutching a familiar-looking ring. Her fiancé took everything, Amelia explained. She found us because of the article Jeremy wrote. I walked over to the woman, seeing my past self in her tears. Let me guess, the ring has special meaning? She nodded. Then let's make sure that meaning becomes something beautiful. I gestured to our group. Welcome to the sanctuary. Your story isn't over. It's just beginning. Because sometimes the best endings aren't endings at all. They're transformations, turning what was broken into something stronger than before. And as I looked around at my found family of phoenixes, I knew Gran had been right all along. The greatest inheritance wasn't in any ring or estate. It was in the power to help others rise.
I never thought my life would turn upside down so suddenly. For 17 years, I believed I had everything figured out, a loving husband, a beautiful daughter, and what I thought was an unshakable marriage. My name is Paloma, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the people closest to us can become strangers overnight. Back then, my life followed a comfortable routine. I worked as an accountant at a trading company, crunching numbers and balancing books. It wasn't the most exciting job, but I was good at it, and it helped provide for our family. My husband Mark was a sales representative for a large firm, which meant frequent business trips. I'd gotten used to those absences over the years, even looked forward to his returns when I'd cook all his favorite meals. Our daughter Sarah was 15, a bright teenager who filled our home with energy. She was the perfect blend of both of us, Mark's charm and my determination. We lived in a modest but comfortable apartment, and I thought we were happy. Looking back now, I realize how naive I was to think that contentment could last forever. "When are you coming back this time?" I asked Mark over the phone during one of his business trips. It was a conversation we'd had countless times before. "Should be home by Thursday," he replied, his voice distant. "Don't bother cooking anything special." That should have been my first clue. Mark had always loved my cooking, especially after being away. But lately, everything had changed subtly. He'd come home from his trips different, distracted, thoughtful, almost cold. When he'd walk through the door, instead of the warm embraces I was used to, he'd barely acknowledge the meals I'd prepared. "Are you okay?" I'd ask him repeatedly. "You seem different." "Just tired from work," he'd say, brushing off my concerns. "It's nothing." I blamed it on a midlife crisis. That's what everyone talked about, right? Men hitting their 40s and going through changes. I convinced myself it was temporary, that everything would return to normal if I just gave him time and space. Sarah noticed it too, but we both stayed quiet, hoping it would pass. "Mom, Dad seems weird lately," she mentioned one evening while we were doing dishes together. "He's just stressed with work, honey," I replied, believing my own lies. "These things happen in marriage sometimes. It'll get better." I focused on being the perfect wife, thinking that if I just tried harder, cooked better meals, kept the house more organized, everything would go back to how it was. But life has a way of shattering our illusions when we least expect it. I remember that ordinary Tuesday evening when everything changed. I had just gotten home from work and was checking my social media messages while sitting on the couch in our living room. A message from someone I didn't know. I almost ignored it, but something made me open it. "Hello, Paloma," the message read. "I think it's time we talked. I'm your husband's second wife." My hands trembled as I continued reading the message in our living room. Each word felt like a knife twisting deeper into my heart. "I've been seeing Mark for 3 years now," the message continued. "We have a beautiful son together, the child he always wanted. I'm young, beautiful, and I make him happy in ways you never could." I felt sick to my stomach, but I couldn't stop reading. Then came the screenshots, dozens of them. Messages between my husband and this woman, revealing the ugly truth about his feelings for me. "I can't stand looking at her anymore," Mark had written. "She's gotten so fat and ugly. Being in bed with her is like sleeping next to a log." Tears blurred my vision as I scrolled through more messages. "Her cooking makes me want to vomit. The whole house feels suffocating. If it wasn't for Sarah, I would have left years ago. The final message from this woman felt like the ultimate slap in the face. If you have any pride left, Paloma, you'll let him go. He doesn't love you anymore. He hasn't for a long time. The room started spinning. I remember trying to stand up, but my legs wouldn't support me. The last thing I heard was my phone clattering to the floor before everything went black. I woke up to Sarah's worried face hovering over me. I was lying on the living room floor where I had collapsed. Mom, can you hear me? Sarah's voice sounded distant. I'm calling an ambulance. No, honey, I'm fine, I tried to say, but the words came out slurred. The paramedics came anyway. They checked my vitals while I sat on our living room couch, Sarah clutching my hand. That's when Mark walked in. What happened? He asked, and for a moment, I saw concern in his eyes. Then he saw my phone on the coffee table, still open to those messages. Is it true? I whispered, looking into his eyes. All of it? He didn't even try to deny it. His face hardened, and in that moment, I saw the stranger he'd become. Yes, he said flatly. I don't love you anymore, Paloma. I haven't for a long time. I want a divorce. Sarah gasped beside me, her grip on my hand tightening. The paramedics tactfully stepped into the kitchen, giving us space. How could you do this to Mom? Sarah's voice shook with anger. How could you? I'm sorry you had to find out this way, was all he said before walking out of the room. The next few weeks passed in a blur. I filed for divorce, going through the motions like a zombie. Sarah was my rock through it all, choosing to stay with me, despite Mark's attempts to convince her otherwise. He agreed to pay alimony for her without argument, probably the only decent thing he did during that time. Time moved forward, as it always does. Before I knew it, Sarah was graduating from high school. Mark and I split the costs of her college education equally. It seemed like the only civil interaction we had left. We both wanted the best for our daughter, even if we couldn't stand being in the same room together. Sarah chose a college in another city, and at first everything seemed fine. She called me regularly, telling me about her classes, her new friends, and life in the dorms. I lived for those calls, clinging to each detail she shared about her new life. But gradually, the calls became less frequent. When I tried reaching out, I'd get short, clipped responses. Sorry, Mom, I'm busy right now. Can't talk, got a study group. Maybe next week, okay? Each excuse felt like a small punch to the gut, but I told myself she was just busy with college life. Until she stopped coming home altogether. Why don't you visit anymore, sweetie? I'd ask during our increasingly rare phone conversations. Just swamped with schoolwork, Mom. You know how it is. One evening, feeling particularly lonely, I decided to check her social media page. At first, nothing seemed unusual, just typical college posts about classes and friends. Then I saw it. Among her friends list was a familiar face, Mark's wife, the woman who had destroyed my marriage. My hands shaking, I clicked on her profile. What I saw made my blood run cold. There were dozens of photos of Sarah with Mark, his wife, and their son. Happy family photos. Finally reunited, read one caption. Complete family time, said another. In every picture, Sarah was beaming, hugging her father and his new wife like they were one big happy family. I felt sick. All those excuses, all those missed visits, she'd been with them the whole time. I took screenshots of the photos and sent them to Sarah with trembling fingers. Then I called her, my heart pounding. She answered on the third ring. Before I could say anything, she cut me off. I was wondering when you'd find out, she said, her voice cold and unfamiliar. Why, Sarah, why didn't you tell me? Because they're fun, Mom. They're rich and interesting. Dad and Lisa take me shopping, buy me designer clothes. He just got me a new car for my birthday. What do you offer? A boring apartment and your boring life? Each word felt like a slap. I'm your mother, Sarah. I raised you. Yeah, well, I'm old enough to choose who I want to spend time with, she interrupted. Lisa gives me money whenever I need it. They take me on vacations. If you don't like it, that's your problem. I sat there in my quiet apartment, staring at my phone through tears. First Mark, now Sarah. The two people I loved most in the world had both chosen the younger, prettier, richer woman over me. I curled up on my couch and sobbed, feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. I desperately needed someone to talk to. That's when I remembered my father. We hadn't spoken in 15 years, not since that terrible fight about Mark. Dad had seen right through him, had warned me repeatedly, but I wouldn't listen. He's not right for you, Paloma, Dad had said back then. There's something off about him. You just don't want me to be happy, I had shouted back. You've never supported my choices. Those were the last words we'd exchanged before I stormed out of his house, choosing Mark over my father. Now, the irony of it all made me laugh bitterly. Dad had been right all along. With trembling fingers, I dialed his number, half expecting it to be disconnected after all these years. Hello? His voice hadn't changed at all. Dad? My voice cracked. It's Paloma. I was wondering if we could talk? Come over right now, he said without hesitation. I'll text you the gate code. Gate code? I wondered as I drove to my childhood home. But nothing could have prepared me for what I found. The modest house I grew up in had been transformed into a stunning estate. A security gate guarded the entrance, and the house itself had been completely renovated, at least triple its original size. Dad was waiting at the door, his hair grayer than I remembered, but his eyes just as kind. Welcome home, sweetheart. Dad, what, how? I gestured at the house. He grinned proudly. A lot can happen in 15 years. Come inside, I'll explain everything. Over coffee in what used to be our simple kitchen, now a gourmet masterpiece, Dad told me how he'd built a real estate empire from scratch. I own about 30 properties in the city now, he said casually. Both residential and commercial. Turns out your old man had a knack for business after all. Then it was my turn. I told him everything, about Mark's betrayal, his new wife and son, and finally, about Sarah's rejection. By the end, I was sobbing in his arms like a little girl. I'm so sorry, Dad, I whispered. You were right about Mark. I should have listened. I forgave you long ago, sweetheart, he stroked my hair. I'm just glad you're home now. After that day, I started visiting Dad regularly. It felt like making up for lost time. We talked about everything, his business, my life, our shared regrets. One evening, as we sat on his terrace overlooking the city, he made an unexpected proposal. Come work for me, he said. I need a good accountant for my company, someone I can trust. Someone who can learn the business from the ground up. Dad, I don't know anything about real estate. I'll teach you. You're smart, Paloma. You always have been. And maybe, he paused, maybe it'll help take your mind off everything else. He was right. Learning the real estate business was exactly what I needed. Dad started teaching me everything: property valuation, contract negotiations, market analysis. For the first time in years, I felt truly excited about something. The numbers made sense to me, and the business strategies challenged my mind in ways my old accounting job never had. 3 years passed quickly as I immersed myself in learning the real estate business. I still checked Sarah's social media occasionally. That's how I learned she was graduating from college. There was no invitation for me to attend the ceremony. Instead, I received a brief message. Don't come to graduation. Lisa says it would make her uncomfortable. The words stung, but they no longer surprised me. My daughter had made her choice clear. She wanted her father's new family, not me. The photos from her graduation showed her beaming between Mark and Lisa, her half-brother perched on Mark's shoulders. The perfect family portrait, complete without me. One evening, Dad invited me over for dinner. Something felt different. he was quieter than usual, more serious. After we finished eating, he led me to his study. "Sit down, sweetheart," he said, lowering himself carefully into his leather chair. "There's something I need to tell you." My heart clenched at his tone. "What is it, Dad?" "I've been sick for a while now," he said quietly. "Cancer. I've been fighting it for 3 years, but..." He shook his head slowly. "The doctors say I don't have much time left." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I had work to do," he smiled sadly. "I needed to prepare you to take over the business. That's why I brought you in when I did. I knew I needed time to teach you everything." I fell to my knees beside his chair, grabbing his hand. "Dad, no." "Hey now," he squeezed my hand. "Don't cry, sweetheart. We got these last 3 years together. We made peace. That's all I wanted, to know you were ready, to know we'd made things right between us. Now I can go peacefully." He was gone 3 months later. I arranged the funeral myself, trying to honor him as best I could. Through my grief, I sent Sarah a message. "Your grandfather passed away. The funeral is on Saturday. Please come." Her response came quickly and hit like a slap. Why would I care about some old man? Dad says he was nasty anyway. Not interested. I stared at the message in disbelief. The man she was dismissing had been ready to welcome her back into his life, despite her treatment of me. He had asked about her often, kept a photo of her on his desk. And now she couldn't even show basic human respect for his passing. The funeral was beautiful, attended by many of Dad's business associates and friends. Sarah's absence felt like a physical wound, but I stood tall, delivering the eulogy with all the strength I could muster. Afterward came the inheritance, the house I'd grown up in, now a mansion, the company I'd learned to run, all the properties Dad had accumulated over the years. His legacy, passed down to me. Everything Mark and Lisa flaunted their wealth with looked small in comparison. But I didn't want the mansion. Instead, I asked my assistant at the company to add it to our rental properties portfolio. I stayed in my apartment. I'd had it renovated exactly how I liked it, and it felt like home. My neighbors had become friends over the years, and the location was perfect for overseeing the business. 2 years passed quietly. The business thrived under my management, though my personal life remained empty of the one person I missed most. Then, out of nowhere, my phone rang with Sarah's number on the screen. "Mom," she said, without any greeting. "I'm getting married. We'll come by next week to talk about it. Jake wants to meet you." True to her word, Sarah arrived at my apartment the following week with her fiancé. I watched as she entered, her eyes scanning my living room with barely concealed disdain. "Still the same old place," she muttered, running a finger along my coffee table. "Still living in dullness and poverty, I see." I bit my tongue, focusing instead on Jake, who seemed uncomfortable with her comment. I busied myself preparing coffee and setting out the pastries I'd bought for their visit. "So," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "tell me about the wedding plans." Sarah straightened up, suddenly animated. "We're planning something spectacular. Only the absolute best venues in the city will do. The ceremony will be in 6 months. That's wonderful. Have you found a place yet?" "We're looking," Jake said politely. "We want something really special." Sarah cleared her throat. "Actually, Mom, that's partly why we're here. Weddings are expensive, you know." "Of course," I nodded. "I'd be happy to help. I can contribute $10,000. Sarah rolled her eyes dramatically. "Well, I guess that's better than nothing. Lisa's already promised to handle my dress and the honeymoon." They didn't stay long after that. As the door closed behind them, I sank onto my couch, thinking about the irony of it all. With the success of Dad's, now my company, I could easily finance 10 such weddings without blinking an eye. But Sarah's attitude, her constant digs about my poverty, her complete lack of interest in my life, it all held me back. "Let's see how this plays out," I murmured to myself. I waited for a wedding invitation, checking my mail every day. Nothing came. Finally, curiosity got the better of me, and I visited Sarah's social media page. There it was, a lengthy post about her perfect wedding venue. My eyes widened as I read the name of the ceremony hall she'd chosen. The Grand Plaza, one of the most prestigious event venues in the city. Also one of my properties. Finally, her post read, "Jake and I found the most amazing venue for our wedding. The Grand Plaza is absolutely perfect, so elegant and exclusive. Just need to sign the rental agreement and everything will be set." I couldn't help but smile. Sarah had no idea that her poor mother owned the very hall she was so excited about. She'd chosen it precisely because it represented everything she thought I couldn't provide: luxury, elegance, wealth. A week after Sarah's visit with Jake, she showed up at my apartment alone. Her expression was cold, practiced. "Mom, I need to tell you something," she said, standing in my living room, not bothering to sit down. "I won't be inviting you to the wedding." I felt my heart crack, but kept my face neutral. "Why not?" "Look around," she gestured dismissively at my apartment. "The wedding will be at this gorgeous hall. Important people will be there: Jake's family, Dad's business associates, Lisa's friends. You." She looked me up and down. "You're too simple, too poor. You wouldn't fit in." The cruelty of her words took my breath away. "But hey," she added, heading for the door, "you can still send a gift. Money would be best. I'll text you my card details." The door clicked shut behind her. I sat there for a long moment, then picked up my phone and made a call to my office. A week later, I walked into the Grand Plaza's executive office, where Sarah, Jake, and his parents were sitting with my property manager, ready to sign the rental agreement. Sarah was beaming, practically glowing with satisfaction, until she saw me walk in. "Mom?" Her jaw dropped. "What are you doing here?" I smiled, settling into the leather chair behind the desk. "The Grand Plaza belongs to me, along with several other luxury venues in the city. In fact," I gestured around us, "this entire company that manages these properties is mine." Sarah started stuttering. But how? Where did you get all this? Remember when I told you your grandfather had died? When I invited you to his funeral?" I kept my voice level. "The one you called some nasty old man? He left me everything: his company, his properties, his legacy." Sarah's face went from pale to red. Then, like flipping a switch, her expression changed to one I recognized, the same calculating look she'd worn when choosing between me and Lisa years ago. "Wait, if you own all this, then I'm your only heir. You have to give me the venue for free. And a wedding gift, maybe one of your properties?" I couldn't help but laugh. "Actually, I came here personally to deny your rental application." "What?" Sarah jumped to her feet. "You can't do that." "I can and I am." I stood up, gathering my papers. "I suggest you find another venue. And Sarah?" I paused at the door. "Maybe think about whether it's worth destroying relationships with people who truly love you just because they don't seem rich or important enough." "But Mom," Sarah's screams followed me down the hallway. "You can't do this to me. I'm your daughter, Mom." I kept walking, my heels clicking against the marble floor, drowning out her protests. For the first time in years, I felt truly strong, not because of my wealth or position, but because I'd finally stood up for myself. 3 days after my confrontation with Sarah at the Grand Plaza, a gold-embossed envelope arrived in my mail. Inside was an elaborate wedding invitation, the kind that probably cost more than most people's weekly salary. My phone buzzed with a message almost simultaneously. "Mom, I'm so sorry for everything," Sarah's message read. "I've been horrible to you. I've done a lot of thinking, and I realize now how wrong I was. I'm ready to cut ties with Dad and Lisa completely. We don't need them in our lives. Please come to my wedding. Please give me another chance." I sat on my couch, holding the invitation in one hand and my phone in the other, feeling an odd sense of déjà vu. The words were perfect, the apology seemed heartfelt, but something felt off. Then it hit me, this wasn't really about me at all. When I chose your father and Lisa, I typed back slowly, it was because they seemed to offer something better than what I had with my dad. More money, more excitement, more status. I abandoned someone who truly loved me for superficial things. Sound familiar? I waited, watching the 3 dots appear and disappear several times before her response came through. That's not fair, Mom. I really want to make things right. But I could see it clearly now. When Mark and Lisa had money and status, Sarah had chosen them. Now that she knew I was wealthy, she was choosing me. The pattern was painfully obvious. I didn't respond to her message. Instead, I placed the wedding invitation in my desk drawer, next to the photo of my father. The wedding date came and went. I spent that day working in my office, looking out over the city my father had built and I now managed. Sarah posted plenty of photos online. She'd found another venue, though not quite as prestigious as the Grand Plaza. She looked beautiful in her white dress, but her smile seemed forced. Sometimes I still check her social media, watch her life unfold from a distance. She doesn't post as many photos with Mark and Lisa anymore. I suppose the shine has worn off that relationship too. Occasionally, she still sends me messages, usually when she needs something, but I've learned to let them sit unanswered. I haven't given up hope for reconciliation. After all, it took me 15 years to understand what I'd done to my father, to truly regret choosing superficial things over real love. My dad waited patiently all those years, ready to welcome me back when I finally understood. Maybe that's my role now, to wait, to be ready if Sarah ever truly understands the difference between loving someone for who they are and loving them for what they can give you. Until then, I'll keep running the company Dad left me, living in my comfortable but modest apartment, and leaving the door open for the day when Sarah might come back, not because I'm rich or poor, but because I'm her mother. My name is Amanda, and for as long as I can remember, my sister Sarah was the golden child. She was 3 years younger than me, but somehow she always came first in our parents' eyes. Don't get me wrong, they didn't neglect me entirely. They just preferred her. When I made the debate team, they nodded and smiled. When Sarah joined the cheerleading squad, they threw a party. When I needed new clothes, we went to the outlet mall. When Sarah wanted a new wardrobe, it was a weekend shopping spree at the fancy stores downtown. Dad wasn't much different. Every Saturday, he'd take Sarah to the park, buy her ice cream, and spend hours pushing her on the swings. I'd tag along sometimes, walking a few steps behind them, watching their matching dark hair bounce as they laughed at inside jokes I wasn't part of. Sarah wasn't cruel about it, which almost made it worse. She never rubbed it in my face or tried to make me feel bad. She was just there, soaking up all the attention like a pretty little sponge, while I learned to thrive in the shadows. Our relationship was comfortable. Not close, exactly, but not hostile either. We existed in a careful balance, like 2 planets orbiting the same sun, never colliding but never quite connecting either. I threw myself into my studies, finding validation in academic achievement that I couldn't get at home. While Sarah was content to coast by on her charm and our parents' indulgence, I worked my ass off. Every A+, every academic award, every teacher's praise, became a brick in the wall I built around my heart. Amanda's so mature for her age, teachers would tell my parents at conferences. Such a dedicated student. My parents would smile politely, then rush home to help Sarah with her homework or console her over some minor social drama. It was just the way things were, and I convinced myself I was okay with it. Looking back now, I should have seen the signs. The way Sarah's smile would tighten when I achieved something she couldn't. The flash of resentment in her eyes when our parents actually paid attention to me. The subtle way she'd redirect conversations to herself whenever I was in the spotlight. But I was too busy trying to prove myself, too focused on being the perfect daughter even if I could never be the favorite one. I thought if I just worked hard enough, achieved enough, maybe one day they'd see me, really see me, for who I was. College was my escape. Finally, a place where hard work actually meant something, where being the responsible one was an asset rather than a consolation prize. I got into state university with a partial scholarship. All those straight A's finally paid off. I threw myself into campus life with the same intensity I'd applied to high school. While other freshmen were struggling to adjust, I was thriving. I joined the business club, made the dean's list, and landed an internship at Preston and Associates, one of the top financial firms in the city. "You're a natural," my supervisor told me during my internship evaluation. "We'd love to have you join us full-time after graduation." I practically floated home that day. For once, everything was falling into place according to my plans, not anyone else's expectations. Meanwhile, Sarah started college 3 years after me. Mom and Dad paid her full tuition, set her up in a fancy apartment near campus, and gave her a monthly allowance that was more than I made at my part-time job. "Your sister needs to focus on the college experience," Dad explained when I pointed out the disparity. "You're different, you actually enjoy studying." He wasn't wrong. While I was building my future, Sarah was building her social media following. Her Instagram was full of party photos and spring break adventures. Every time I visited home, she had a new story about some crazy night out. "You should come party with us sometime," she'd say, knowing full well I was too busy with my internship and studies to join her. After graduation, Preston and Associates made good on their offer. I started as a junior analyst and rented a small but decent apartment downtown. It wasn't much, but it was mine, earned with my own hard work. That's where I met James. He was the financial director, tall, clean-cut, with kind eyes and a quiet confidence that made my heart skip. We started running into each other in the break room, then at company happy hours, and finally, he asked me to dinner. When he proposed 6 months later, I was over the moon. He did it properly, down on one knee at our favorite restaurant, with a ring that must have cost him at least 3 months' salary. I couldn't wait to tell my family. We arranged a dinner at my parents' house, and Sarah, who'd recently graduated and moved back home, would be there too. She'd been working some entry-level marketing job, though from her social media, it seemed like she spent more time at happy hours than at her desk. The dinner started well enough. Mom made her famous pot roast, Dad opened his best wine, and James charmed them all with stories about his work and plans for the future. "Amanda really lucked out with you," Mom gushed, touching James's arm. "Such a responsible young man. They make such a perfect couple," Dad agreed, beaming at us. "When's the wedding?" For once, all the attention was on me, and it felt amazing. James squeezed my hand under the table as my parents peppered us with questions about wedding venues and dates. But across the table, Sarah sat picking at her food, her face growing darker with each passing minute. I caught her staring at my engagement ring, her lips pressed into a thin line. Every time James spoke, she would roll her eyes slightly or shift uncomfortably in her chair. James and I decided not to rush into the wedding. We started looking at venues on weekends, discussing color schemes over dinner, and dreaming about our future together. I'd never been happier. That all changed on a Tuesday evening. I remember it was Tuesday because I'd just finished my weekly video call with my wedding planner. I was still in my work clothes when James knocked on my door. Something was off. He usually texted before coming over, and his face was like a thundercloud. "We need to talk," he said, pushing past me into the apartment. His voice was cold, nothing like the warm, gentle tone I was used to. "What's wrong?" I asked, my stomach already knotting with anxiety. He pulled out his phone and started scrolling. "Care to explain these?" My heart stopped as he showed me photo after photo. There I was, or someone who looked like me, in compromising positions with different men. Screenshots of explicit text conversations filled his screen, all allegedly from me to various guys. "James, that's not. I never." My voice shook as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. "These are fake. I've never cheated on you." "Fake?" He laughed bitterly. "Your own sister sent these to me." "So you're saying Sarah made all this up?" Created fake photos and messages just to break us up? Why would she do that? I don't know why she'd do this, but James, please, look at my phone. I scrambled to grab it from the coffee table. Check everything. There's nothing like this on there. I've never cheated on you. Don't bother, he cut me off, stepping back when I tried to hand him my phone. I trusted you, Amanda. I thought you were different. But you're just like all the others, a lying, cheating traitor. James, please, I begged, tears streaming down my face. You know me. You know I wouldn't do this. But his eyes were cold and distant. We're done. Don't try to contact me again. The door slammed behind him with a finality that shattered my world. I tried calling him immediately, straight to voicemail. Text messages wouldn't go through. Email bounced back. He'd blocked me everywhere. I collapsed onto my couch, my whole body shaking with sobs. How could this be happening? How could he believe I would cheat on him? And Sarah, my own sister, had done this to me? The hours blurred together as I cried until I had no tears left. My phone kept lighting up with concerned messages from friends and coworkers. Apparently, James had already started spreading the word about my infidelity. After crying myself to sleep, I woke up the next morning with one purpose: confronting Sarah. My hand shook as I dialed her number, half expecting her to ignore the call. But she picked up on the second ring. Well, if it isn't my cheating sister, she answered, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. Why did you do it? My voice cracked. Why would you fake those photos and messages? She laughed. Actually laughed. The sound made my blood run cold. Oh, come on, Amanda. Did you really think I'd let you have your perfect little happily ever after? You, married to a successful, handsome guy like James? Please. What are you talking about? You don't deserve him. Her voice suddenly turned vicious. You don't deserve any of it. The perfect job, the perfect fiancé. Who do you think you are? I felt like I'd been slapped. Sarah, we're sisters. Sisters? She sneered. Please. You're nothing but second best, Amanda. You always have been, and you always will be. Did you really think you'd get to marry someone like James before me? That's not how this works. In that moment, 25 years of sisterhood shattered. All those memories, the shared rooms, the whispered secrets, the forced smiles at family gatherings, they all took on a different meaning. Every eye roll, every backhanded compliment, every moment of tension suddenly made sense. You've been jealous of me this whole time, I whispered, the realization hitting me like a truck. Jealous? She laughed again. Don't flatter yourself. I'm better than you in every way. I just couldn't stand watching you play house with James when we all know you don't deserve him. I drove to my parents' house that afternoon, desperate for support. Surely they'd believe me. Surely they'd see what Sarah had done. I was wrong. Amanda, honey, Mom said, shaking her head. Why are you trying to blame your sister for your mistakes? But I didn't make any mistakes, I practically shouted. Sarah faked everything. She admitted it to me. Dad crossed his arms. Your sister would never do something like that. Stop trying to shift the blame. If you cheated on James, you need to own up to it. I left their house in a daze. Once again, Sarah was the golden child who could do no wrong, and I was the screw-up who couldn't be trusted. But life wasn't done kicking me while I was down. The next morning, I walked into work only to find my access card denied. Security escorted me to HR, where a sympathetic-looking woman handed me my termination papers. I'm so sorry, she whispered, glancing around to make sure no one could hear. James pushed for immediate termination. He said he couldn't work in the same building as, well. I didn't even finish reading the paperwork. I just signed it, packed up my desk, and left with my head held high, at least until I got to my car, where I broke down completely. 3 days later, my best friend Jenny called. Amanda, I don't know how to tell you this, but Sarah and James are dating. She's been posting pictures of them together all over Instagram. She's saying she's been helping him heal after your betrayal. I hung up without responding and threw my phone across the room. In the span of a week, I'd lost my fiancé, my job, my family's trust, and now my sister was dating the man she'd helped me lose. Depression hit me like a ton of bricks. For a month, I barely left my apartment except to buy groceries. Thank God I'd been saving for the wedding, at least I could afford to wallow in my misery without worrying about rent. I spent my days in a fog, alternating between crying and staring blankly at Netflix shows I couldn't focus on. My phone stayed off most of the time. I couldn't bear to see more photos of Sarah and James together, couldn't stomach another well-meaning message from friends asking if I was okay. Then one night, around 3 a.m., I shot up in bed with sudden clarity. The fog lifted, and for the first time in weeks, I could think straight. I didn't want to die, I wanted revenge. Not the petty kind with drunk texts or social media drama. No, I wanted to expose Sarah for who she really was, to make everyone see the snake hiding behind that innocent smile. It was like someone had flipped a switch in my brain. The next morning, I showered for the first time in days, put on my best suit, and started job hunting. Within 2 weeks, I landed a position at Morrison Financial, a bigger firm than Preston and Associates, with better benefits and a corner office. I even started visiting my parents again. I'm doing better now, I'd tell them with a practiced smile. Sometimes things fall apart so better things can come together. They ate it up, relieved to see their older daughter moving on so maturely. I sat through family dinners, nodding politely when Sarah and James would show up hand in hand. He'd avoid looking at me directly, while Sarah would shoot me these little smirks when no one else was watching. James and I are thinking about getting engaged, she announced at one such dinner, watching me carefully for a reaction. I just smiled and asked to pass the potatoes. 2 years passed this way. I built my career, making a name for myself in the industry. I went on a few dates, though nothing serious. And I waited. Patience had always been my strong suit. Then came my opportunity. Sarah was having Sunday dinner at our parents' house, without James, who was on a business trip. She'd left her phone on the kitchen counter while helping Mom with dessert. I knew her passwords, she'd always been careless about security, leaving sticky notes with her login information scattered around her desk at our parents' house. It took less than a minute to get into her phone. And there it was, months of messages with someone named Mike. Hundreds of texts, dozens of photos that would make James's blood boil. God, Jay is so boring, one message read. All he talks about is work and investments. At least he's loaded. Can't wait to see you tomorrow, baby, another said. Jay's credit card is buying us a nice hotel room. My hands shook as I forwarded everything to my email, the messages, the photos, the hotel receipts. I even found Mike's address in their chat history. They weren't even trying to be careful. Getting the video evidence was almost too easy. Mike's house was in a quiet suburban neighborhood, perfect for discreet surveillance. I spent a few evenings parked across the street in a rental car, my phone camera ready. Sarah wasn't exactly subtle about her afternoon visits. She'd pull up in the Mercedes James had bought her, practically skipping to Mike's front door. Their passionate embraces on the doorstep gave me all the footage I needed. Baby, I missed you, she'd coo loud enough for my phone's microphone to pick up. James is so boring compared to you. I collected 3 weeks worth of videos. Sarah and Mike making out against his car. Sarah sneaking out of his house at odd hours. The two of them laughing over what looked like expensive champagne on his patio, probably paid for with James's credit card. Then came the engagement party. Sarah insisted on having it at our parents' house. It's more intimate, she'd said, though really she just wanted to show off to the whole family. James had proposed with a ring twice the size of the one he'd given me. The house was packed with relatives, friends, and James's entire family. Sarah held court in the living room, showing off her ring to anyone who'd look. Mom and Dad beamed with pride, while James's parents kept commenting on what a perfect couple they made. I'd like to make a toast, I announced, standing up during a lull in the conversation. All eyes turned to me. Sarah shot me that superior look I'd grown so used to. The same look she'd given me 2 years ago, when she'd stolen my fiancé. Poor thing, probably thought I was about to give some gracious speech about being happy for them. I have something to share with everyone, I continued, connecting my phone to the TV. A little engagement present, you might say. The first text messages appeared on the screen. Sarah's face went white. What is this? James stood up, squinting at the messages. Oh, just some conversations between your fiancé and her boyfriend Mike, I said calmly. There's quite a lot of them. They particularly enjoy discussing how boring you are, James. But hey, at least you're rich, right? That's not. Sarah stammered. And here's some video evidence, in case anyone has doubts. I played the clips one by one. Sarah and Mike kissing. Sarah leaving his house at midnight. Sarah laughing about James while sipping expensive wine. The room erupted into chaos. James was on his feet, roaring at Sarah. His parents were shouting about disgrace and scandal. Our relatives were whispering and pointing. You crazy bastard, Sarah screamed at me. How could you do this? Funny, I replied. That's exactly what I wanted to ask you 2 years ago. Mom collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. Dad just stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I didn't stick around for the aftermath. I gathered my things, walked to my car, and drove home in perfect silence. Inside my apartment, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my balcony, watching the city lights twinkle. For the first time in 2 years, I felt completely at peace. My phone rang at 7 a.m. the next morning. Mom's name flashed on the screen. How could you humiliate your sister like that? She screamed, before I could even say hello. James called off the engagement. She's devastated. You need to fix this right now. Fix what exactly? I asked calmly. The fact that she cheated? The fact that she got caught? Or maybe you want me to fix the fact that she's finally facing consequences for her actions? She's your sister. Dad's voice came on the line, they had me on speaker. Family protects family. You will fix this, or we'll. I cut him off. Or you'll what? Take her side again? Go ahead, I'm used to it. I hung up and blocked their numbers. I needed coffee before dealing with any more family drama. But I hadn't even finished my first cup when someone started pounding on my apartment door. Open up, you damned bastard. Sarah's voice echoed through the hallway. I took my time walking to the door, unlocked it, and stepped back as she burst in. You ruined everything, she screamed, mascara running down her face. You ruined my life. Karma's a bitch, isn't it? I took another sip of coffee. I'm going to make you pay for this. She grabbed a framed photo from my wall and threw it at me. I dodged it easily. Like you made me pay 2 years ago? I asked quietly. When you fabricated evidence of me cheating? When you destroyed my relationship? When you took James for yourself? She froze, realization dawning on her face. You planned this. All of it. The whole time. 2 years, I confirmed. 2 years of watching and waiting. 2 years of playing the forgiving sister. 2 years of knowing that sooner or later, you'd show your true colors. You're insane, she whispered. No, Sarah, I'm patient. And unlike you, I only needed real evidence to get my revenge. She ran from my apartment like she'd seen a ghost. The weeks that followed were a parade of guilt-tripping messages from my parents. Sarah had lost her job due to emotional distress. She wasn't eating, wasn't sleeping. She'd moved back home and spent her days crying in her old bedroom. You've destroyed your sister, Mom texted. Are you happy now? I didn't respond. What was there to say? Dad tried a different approach. If you don't make this right, you're out of the will. Is that what you want? I finally replied to that one, do whatever you want with your money. I've already got what I wanted, the truth. They didn't like that answer much. But for the first time in my life, I didn't care what they thought about me. While my personal life had been a soap opera, my career was soaring. Morrison Financial promoted me to senior director, complete with a corner office and a substantial raise. Sarah, meanwhile, hit rock bottom. After losing her marketing job, she moved back in with our parents. That's when the drinking started, wine with breakfast, vodka for lunch, whatever she could get her hands on. It was during one of her drunken episodes that the truth finally came out. Mom told me about it later, how Sarah had been sprawled on the couch, halfway through a bottle of wine, when she started rambling. I showed him those pictures she'd slurred. Made them all up, found some girl who looked like Amanda, got someone to help me fake the texts. She didn't deserve him anyway. I deserved him more. Mom and Dad sat there in stunned silence as their perfect younger daughter continued her drunken confession, spilling every detail about how she'd orchestrated my downfall. 2 years of lies came crashing down in one wine-soaked evening. Dad called me the next day. His voice was thick with emotion. "Amanda, we need to talk. Can you come over?" I found them both in the living room, looking like they'd aged 10 years overnight. Mom couldn't even look me in the eye. "We were wrong," Dad said simply. "About everything. We've been wrong for a very long time." Mom burst into tears. "How could we not have seen it? How could we have been so blind?" "We failed you," Dad continued. "Not just about James, but your whole life. We always favored Sarah, always made excuses for her. We let her get away with destroying your happiness, because we couldn't believe she was capable of such cruelty. It was the apology I'd waited my whole life to hear. But instead of feeling triumphant, I just felt tired." Dad cleared his throat. "I'd been thinking, maybe we should try family therapy. The three of us. To work through everything. So we did. Every Tuesday evening, we sat in Dr. Marshall's office, unpacking decades of favoritism, resentment, and misplaced trust. It wasn't easy, there were tears, shouting matches, weeks of awkward silence. But slowly, gradually, things began to change. As for Sarah, my parents finally did what they should have done years ago, they cut her off. They gave her enough money for a security deposit and first month's rent on an apartment, telling her she could come back when she got help and showed genuine remorse for her actions. Last I heard, she's working as a receptionist somewhere downtown and living in a studio apartment. She sends Mom and Dad messages sometimes, but they're staying firm on their boundaries. James reached out eventually. My parents had told him everything, Sarah's confession, the years of manipulation, all of it. He asked to meet for coffee. "I should have believed you," he said, looking older and tired. "I should have at least listened to your side. I know it's probably too late, but maybe we could try again?" I studied his face, the face I'd once thought I'd wake up to every morning for the rest of my life. I felt nothing. "No," I said gently. "I forgive you, James. But I don't love you anymore. I'm not the same person I was 2 years ago. These days, my life is quieter. I have dinner with Mom and Dad every Sunday. We're not perfect, there are still moments of tension, old habits that die hard. But we're trying, and that's more than we ever did before. I don't regret exposing Sarah. Some might call it revenge, but I call it justice. She made her choices, and now she's living with the consequences. As for me, I'm exactly where I want to be. My career is thriving, I have my own place, and for the first time in my life, I don't feel like I'm second best to anyone." Life has a funny way of teaching us who we really are. 2 years ago, if you'd told me I'd be where I am today, successful, independent, and completely estranged from my family, I would have laughed in disbelief. But here I am, and it's quite a story to tell. I'm Jillian Matthews, and back then, I was working as a manager at TradeSync Solutions, a mid-sized trading company. I was good at my job, but like many women in their late 20s, I was starting to feel that societal pressure to settle down. I had a decent career and a small circle of close friends. My family consisted of my parents, who I was close to at the time, and my older brother Marcus, who was 2 years my senior and had always been the golden child of the family. Marcus and I had grown up together in suburban Boston, sharing the typical sibling rivalry but maintaining what I thought was a solid relationship. He was always the more outgoing one, the life of the party, while I was more focused on my career and building a stable future. Our parents doted on him, and I had learned to accept that as just the way things were in our family. It was at Jenny's housewarming party, one of those gatherings where friends of friends mingle over cheap wine and supermarket cheese, where I met Tom. He was charming in that understated way that sneaks up on you, with dark brown hair that fell slightly over his eyes and a smile that made everyone feel like they were in on some private joke. We got talking about our shared love of true crime podcasts, and before I knew it, 3 hours had passed. We exchanged numbers that night, and within a week, we were texting daily. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant downtown, where we talked until the waitstaff started giving us pointed looks about closing time. The second date turned into a third, then a fourth, and before I knew it, we were spending every weekend together. Tom was different from the other guys I dated. He seemed more mature, more focused on the future. 6 months into our relationship, we started talking about moving in together. He had a decent job in software sales, and we shared similar values about saving money and building a stable future. On our 1-year anniversary, Tom took me to the same Italian restaurant where we'd had our first date. He seemed nervous throughout dinner, fumbling with his water glass and checking his phone more often than usual. Just as our dessert arrived, he got down on one knee beside our table, pulling out a small velvet box. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear my own voice as I said yes. The ring was perfect, simple but elegant, just what I would have chosen for myself. As other diners applauded and congratulated us, I felt like I was floating on air. The weekend after our engagement, I brought Tom to meet my family. I was nervous, my parents could be pretty judgmental, and Marcus had a way of either making people feel instantly welcome or completely uncomfortable. There was usually no in-between with him. Mom opened the door before we even reached the porch. "There's my baby girl," she exclaimed, pulling me into a hug before turning to Tom. "And you must be the man who's stolen our Jillian's heart." Dad and Marcus were in the living room watching a football game. Marcus jumped up immediately, extending his hand to Tom. "So you're the guy my little sister won't shut up about," he grinned, giving Tom a firm handshake. "And you must be the infamous Marcus," Tom replied smoothly. "Gil's told me quite a bit about you too." The afternoon went better than I could have hoped. Mom insisted on showing Tom all my embarrassing childhood photos, despite my protests, while Dad grilled him about his job and future plans. To my surprise, Tom and Marcus hit it off immediately, especially when they discovered they supported the same football team. Finally, Marcus exclaimed during dinner, throwing his arm around Tom's shoulders. "I'd been dreaming of having a brother forever, but all I got was this troublemaker." He pointed at me with his fork. I stuck my tongue out at him. "Please, you wouldn't have survived without me covering for you all those times in high school." "True that, sis," he laughed, and the whole table joined in. The next few months were a whirlwind of wedding preparations. Mom took charge of the flower arrangements, Dad handled the venue negotiations, and Marcus appointed himself Tom's unofficial bachelor party planner and drinking buddy. They started meeting regularly for beers, and I was honestly thrilled to see my fiancé and my brother becoming such close friends. The wedding itself was simple, but perfect. We held it in my parents' backyard, with fairy lights strung through the trees and mason jars filled with wildflowers on the tables. Our closest friends and family were there, and when Tom kissed me after saying "I do," I truly believed this was my happily ever after. We moved into Tom's rented apartment after the honeymoon, a cozy 1-bedroom in a decent neighborhood. That's when we started our saving plan for our own place. We decided to make it into a friendly competition, each of us putting money into separate accounts to see who could save more for the down payment. At first, it was fun. We'd compare takeout menus to find the best deals, have movie nights at home instead of going out, and cook elaborate meals together to avoid expensive restaurants. But about 3 months in, Tom started getting restless. "We're turning into an old married couple already," he complained one evening. "We're too young to live like hermits." I tried to remind him of our goals, showing him how much we'd already saved. "Think about it, in a few years, we could have our own place. Wouldn't that be worth it?" He would nod and seem to understand, but then Marcus started inviting him out for guys' nights on Fridays. At first, I was worried, but Marcus assured me he'd keep an eye on Tom. I believed him. After all, who better to trust with my husband than my own brother? And Tom would always come home in a better mood after these outings, more affectionate and understanding about our saving goals. So I learned to accept it, even look forward to having some quiet time to myself on Friday nights. A year into our marriage, I was feeling pretty good about our progress. My savings account was growing steadily. I had managed to put away just over $30,000. I had no idea how much Tom had saved. We'd kept that part of our competition private, but I hoped he was doing as well as I was. It was a Thursday evening when Tom dropped his fishing trip bombshell. "Marcus and I are thinking of going fishing this weekend," he announced over dinner. His friend has a cabin up at Lake Webster. I looked up from my pasta, surprised. "This weekend? I thought we could finally have some time together. You've been working late all week." "Come on, Gil," he grinned, his eyes lighting up like a kid at Christmas. "I haven't been fishing in ages. It'll be fun. Just us guys, some beers, maybe catch something worth bragging about." As if on cue, there was a knock at our door. Marcus burst in. He had a key for emergencies, though I was starting to question the wisdom of that decision. "Little sister," he boomed, spreading his arms wide. "Please, pretty please let your wonderful husband come fishing with me this weekend." He dropped to his knees dramatically in front of my chair. "I promise I'll take good care of him. No wild parties, no crazy stunts, just 2 guys trying to outsmart some fish." I couldn't help but laugh. "Get up, you idiot. You're 40, not 4. Not until you say yes," he insisted, giving me his best puppy dog eyes, the same ones that had gotten him out of trouble countless times when we were kids. They left early Saturday morning, loading the car with fishing gear and a cooler full of supplies. I spent most of that morning cleaning the apartment, trying to keep busy, but by afternoon I was climbing the walls with boredom. That's when I had an idea. Marcus's girlfriend Sarah and I had become pretty good friends over the past year. She was smart, funny, and seemed to genuinely make my brother happy. Maybe she'd want to go shopping. I could justify a small splurge from my savings for some girl time. I pulled out my phone and dialed her number. She picked up on the 3rd ring. "Hey Sarah, it's Jillian. Listen, the boys are off fishing, so I was wondering if you'd like to go shopping? Maybe grab some lunch?" There was a pause on the other end. "Fishing? Marcus isn't fishing. He's here with me at my place. We're getting ready to drive to my parents' house for the weekend. He's actually in the next room right now." My blood ran cold. In the background, I could hear my brother's voice. "Who's that, babe?" "Just my friend Lucy," Sarah replied, her voice slightly muffled. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, as the implications of what I'd just learned began to sink in. My husband and my brother had lied to me. But why? Where was Tom really going? "Sarah," I whispered, "please don't tell Marcus about this call. I need to figure something out. Just, please?" "Of course," she promised. "Are you okay?" "I don't know, I'll call you later." I hung up before my voice could break. For several minutes, I just sat there on our bed, my mind racing. Tom's laptop was on his desk, humming quietly in sleep mode. We had always been open with each other about passwords, or at least, I thought we had been. His was simple, his mother's birth date. I'd teased him about being too predictable, about needing better security. Now, that predictability was working in my favor. My hands trembled as I opened the laptop and typed in the password. His social media accounts were still logged in, he'd always been careless about that too. And then I saw her name, Rebecca. The message thread was extensive, going back months. With each scroll, each message I read, I felt my world crumbling around me. Can't wait to see you this weekend, baby. Your wife really bought the fishing story? Yeah, my brother-in-law's got my back. He's a legend. Ha, she's so clueless. Must be nice having such a trusting wife. They had been meeting almost every other weekend. Hotels, her apartment, even weekend trips disguised as work conferences or guys' outings. The level of detail, the casual cruelty of their jokes about me, the intimate photographs they shared, it made me physically sick. But worse was yet to come. There was a separate message thread with Marcus. My brother, protector, best friend since childhood. She totally bought it again, Tom had written just yesterday. Your sister's as gullible as ever. Huh, Marcus replied. Gil's always been a bit slow. Remember when we were kids and I convinced her that ice cream grew on trees? She's never gotten any smarter. You're the best wingman ever, bro. Rebecca says hi, BTW. Says thanks for covering with Sarah too. Anytime, what are brothers for? Besides, this is way more fun than actually hanging out with my boring sister. Hit me up when you're back, those strip club girls from last month have been asking about us. The messages went on and on. Plans for their guys' nights, detailed accounts of their visits to strip clubs, discussions about various women they'd met. Not only had Marcus been covering for Tom's affair, but he'd been actively participating in a lifestyle that would destroy Sarah if she ever found out. I read about how they laughed at my careful saving plans, how they mocked my dreams of owning a home. They joked about how I'd probably end up paying for everything anyway, since I was such a sucker. My own brother had called me stupid, naive, boring. The same brother who used to chase away bullies when we were kids, who'd held my hand at Dad's surgery 2 years ago, who'd cried at my wedding. The room was spinning. I ran to the bathroom and threw up, my whole body shaking. When I could finally stand again, I went back to the laptop. With methodical precision, I forwarded every damning message to my email account. Every cruel joke, every planned deception, every piece of evidence of their betrayal. I spent Saturday night in a strange, calm state of rage, methodically researching apartments and making calls. By Sunday morning, I had secured a furnished one-bedroom across town, paid the deposit from my savings, and signed the lease electronically. Tom came home around 3 in the afternoon, his face flushed and happy. He was carrying a convenience store bag with a few frozen fish inside, a pathetic attempt at maintaining his lie. Hey, babe, he called out cheerfully. You should have seen the ones that got away. I was sitting at the kitchen table, my laptop open in front of me. Without a word, I turned it toward him. On the screen was his conversation with Rebecca, including their plans for this weekend's rendezvous. You know what's funny? I said, my voice eerily calm. I actually expected you to at least try to apologize. He straightened up, his expression hardening. Why should I? You want to know the truth? You've become boring, Jillian. All you care about is saving money and planning for the future. Where's the fun? Where's the excitement? Even Marcus says what? I cut him off. That I'm stupid? Naive? That I'm such a sucker for believing my husband and brother would actually be honest with me? Look, he sighed, running his hand through his hair, maybe this is for the best. We're clearly wanting different things. You're right, I interrupted again, standing up. I wanted a marriage, you wanted a convenience. I grabbed my pre-packed suitcase from behind the couch. I'm filing for divorce. Don't worry about your precious savings, you can keep them. Though I doubt there's much left after all those strip clubs and hotel rooms. I spent the afternoon moving my essential belongings to the new apartment. It was small but clean, with basic furniture and a view of a small park. My savings, the money I'd been setting aside for our future, would now be my fresh start fund. That evening, I drove to my parents' house for their regular Sunday dinner. I knew Marcus and Sarah would be there. They always were after their weekends with her parents. Mom was setting the table when I arrived. Dad was in his usual armchair, and Marcus and Sarah were on the couch, looking like the perfect couple. "There's my girl," Mom smiled. "We missed you at lunch yesterday." "Yeah, about that." I looked directly at Marcus. "How your weekend covering for Tom's affair was, Marcus?" The room went dead silent. Marcus's face turned white. "What are you talking about?" Dad demanded. I pulled out my phone and started reading the messages aloud. The crude jokes, the strip club visits, the careful coordination of lies. With each word, Sarah's face grew more horrified. When I finished, she turned to Marcus, tears in her eyes. "Is this true?" He couldn't even look at her. "Sarah, please." The sound of her palm connecting with his cheek echoed through the room. "We're done," she choked out. "Everything, we're done." She grabbed her purse and ran out, the front door slamming behind her. After Sarah left, I expected my parents to be shocked, angry, disappointed in Marcus. Instead, my mother burst into tears, not for me, but for him. "Look what you've done," she cried, rushing to comfort Marcus, who sat with his head in his hands. "Your brother's relationship is ruined." I stared at her in disbelief. "Are you serious right now? Did you hear anything I just said? About how he helped Tom cheat on me? About the strip clubs? The lies?" "Oh, Jillian," Dad sighed, shaking his head. "Boys will be boys. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. Tom was just blowing off some steam, and Marcus was being a good friend." A good friend? I felt like I'd stepped into some bizarre parallel universe. "He helped my husband cheat on me. He lied to my face for months. And now you've destroyed his relationship with Sarah," Mom snapped. "Was that really necessary? Couldn't you have handled this privately?" Marcus lifted his head, his eyes red but dry. "Yeah, sis, real classy move. You just had to drag everyone into this, didn't you?" I looked between them, my mother stroking Marcus's hair like he was a wounded child, my father giving me that disappointed look he'd perfected over the years, and my brother, playing the victim as he had his entire life. In that moment, something inside me broke and reformed, harder and colder than before. "You know what? You're right. I should have known better than to expect any of you to take my side. Marcus has always been the golden child, hasn't he? He can do no wrong. Well, congratulations, you can have each other." I walked out of my childhood home that night and didn't look back. The divorce proceedings were surprisingly quick. Tom tried to claim half of my savings, arguing they were marital assets. "We agreed to save together," he said in mediation, trying to sound reasonable. "It was our joint plan for our future." But even his parents, who'd stayed out of the whole mess, told him to drop it. "Don't make yourself look worse than you already do," his mother had said sharply. He withdrew his claim the next day. From mutual friends, I heard that Marcus and Tom were still thick as thieves. Without Sarah to keep him in check, Marcus had fully embraced the single life again. They were regulars at every bar and club in town, living it up like college freshmen instead of grown men in their 30s. Their social media was full of party pictures, groups of girls, and drunken adventures. Not that I looked often, but word got back to me. Funny how clarity comes when you strip everything away. Without the distractions of a failing marriage or family drama, I could finally focus on what I wanted. And what I wanted was to succeed. I volunteered for every challenging project that came through TradeSync Solutions. The ones other managers avoided because they were too complex, too risky, or too time-consuming, I took them all. I stayed late, came in early, and poured every ounce of my energy into making each project exceptional. My first major success came with the Anderson account, a client everyone had written off as impossible to please. I restructured their entire trading framework, created new reporting systems, and increased their profitability by 47% in the first quarter. The CEO himself called to praise my work. That success led to bigger projects. I developed a new risk assessment protocol that saved the company millions in potential losses. I streamlined our international trading processes, reducing transaction times by 60%. Each victory built upon the last, and people started to notice. "Jillian, my boss called me in one day. How would you feel about joining the management team? We need someone with your vision." The promotion came with a corner office and a salary that made my eyes water. I celebrated by buying myself a sleek black Mercedes, not the most practical choice, perhaps, but I wanted something that would remind me every day of how far I'd come. 6 months later, I closed on my dream apartment, a 2-bedroom condo in the city's most desirable neighborhood. The mortgage payments were steep, but I could handle them. Every night, I would stand on my balcony overlooking the city lights, feeling proud of what I'd built on my own. I hadn't spoken to my family in all this time. No birthday calls, no holiday gatherings, no Sunday dinners. Sometimes I'd see their numbers on my phone, but I never answered. The wounds were still too raw, the betrayal too fresh. Then, on a random Tuesday evening, as I was reviewing quarterly projections in my new home office, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and few people had my new address. Through the security camera, I saw my parents standing there, looking older and more tired than I remembered. For a moment, I considered not answering. But something in their posture, the way Mom kept wringing her hands, how Dad's shoulders slumped, made me buzz them up. "Jillian," Mom started as soon as I opened the door, "you look wonderful. What do you want?" My voice was cool, professional, the same tone I used in difficult client meetings. They exchanged glances before Dad spoke. "It's about Marcus. We were wrong about him. About everything." They told me how Marcus had spiraled after Sarah left him. How his friendship with Tom had turned toxic, endless partying, drinking, hooking up with random women. How he'd started showing up to work hungover, then drunk. 2 formal warnings, one for being intoxicated at his desk, another for no showing an important client meeting. "He's been fired," Mom said, her voice breaking. "His references are terrible. No one will hire him. He's living in his old room now. He has no money, no prospects." "What exactly do you expect me to do about this?" I asked, leaning against my kitchen counter. The marble was cool against my palms, a small luxury I'd chosen for myself when renovating. Mom's eyes lit up with hope at my question. "Well, sweetheart, we know you're in management now. At such a prestigious company. We were thinking," Dad continued, "maybe you could find a position for him? Something suitable. With a good salary. It doesn't have to be anything too demanding." A laugh escaped my lips before I could stop it. "Let me get this straight. You want me to risk my professional reputation, which I built from scratch, to give a cushy job to the brother who betrayed me? The same brother who helped destroy my marriage?" "Jillian, that was 2 years ago," Mom pleaded. "People make mistakes." "Mistakes?" I straightened up, my voice deadly calm. "A mistake is forgetting to buy milk. A mistake is being late for dinner. What Marcus did, that was a choice. Multiple choices, actually. He chose to cover for Tom's affairs. He chose to mock me behind my back. He chose his friendship with my cheating ex-husband over his own sister. He's family," Dad argued, his face reddening. "Family forgives." "Really? Where was this family loyalty when I needed it? When I showed you proof of what they'd done to me? You sided with him then, remember?" "You're being unreasonable," Mom snapped. "If you don't help your brother, we'll disinherit you. Everything will go to Marcus." I looked around my apartment, at the art I'd chosen, the furniture I'd bought, the life I'd built without their help. Then I laughed again, genuinely this time. "I don't need or want anything from you. I think it's time for you to leave." I walked to the door and held it open. I have an early meeting tomorrow. They tried to argue more, but I simply stood there, door open, waiting. Finally, they left, Mom in tears, Dad muttering about ungrateful daughters. As I closed the door behind them, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Through the window, I watched them get into their aging Volvo, the same car they'd had since I was in college. I thought about Marcus in his childhood bedroom, probably nursing another hangover, waiting for someone else to solve his problems like they always had. Last I heard, he was doing odd jobs around the neighborhood, mowing lawns, painting fences, anything to scrape together drinking money. Tom had eventually grown tired of partying with a broke friend and moved on. Karma, as they say, is a patient visitor. I poured myself a glass of wine, an expensive Bordeaux I'd bought to celebrate my last successful project, and walked out onto my balcony. The city stretched out before me, lights twinkling like stars fallen to earth. Below, I could see my Mercedes in its reserved parking spot, a symbol of everything I'd achieved on my own. Some might call me cold for turning my back on family. But family isn't just about blood, it's about trust, respect, and loyalty. Those who truly love you don't betray you, mock you, or try to manipulate you. They stand by you, support you, and celebrate your successes. I never thought I'd be living alone in this house at 62. Running my fingers along the smooth wooden banister as I climbed the stairs each evening, I can't help but think about all the generations of my family who've done the same. This house on Maple Street has been in my family for over a century, and I've called it home for most of my life. My name is Caroline Mitchell, and 20 years ago, my husband Robert left me for his 25-year-old secretary. Our son Tommy was only 12 at the time. I remember the day Robert told me he was leaving as if it were yesterday. He stood in our kitchen, not meeting my eyes, fumbling with his wedding ring. "I'm sorry, Caroline. I never meant for this to happen," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I just stood there, gripping the kitchen counter until my knuckles turned white. "Does she make you happy, Robert?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He nodded, still not looking at me. "I'll make sure Tommy is taken care of. I'll pay good alimony." And he did keep that promise, I'll give him that. Every month, without fail, the money came in. I saved every penny of it for Tommy's college fund, working extra hours at the marketing firm to cover our daily expenses. The house, thank goodness, was already paid for, my grandmother's final gift to me. This house has been my anchor through everything. Film crews even used it once for a period piece about the Civil War era, saying it perfectly captured the essence of that time. The producer offered to buy it for an obscene amount of money, but I couldn't sell it. This house isn't just walls and windows, it's my heritage, my story. After Robert left, I threw myself into my work and raising Tommy. Dating? It never felt right. My colleagues would try to set me up, but I always declined. "I'm married to my career," I'd joke, but the truth was, I'd lost faith in love. Tommy became my whole world. I made sure he had everything he needed: love, support, guidance. We had our routines: breakfast together every morning, homework at the kitchen table, Sunday movie nights. He graduated with honors and went to a good college, thanks to his father's alimony payments. When Tommy brought home Amy from work last year, I tried to be welcoming. She seemed nice enough, always smiling, complimenting the house, asking about family photos. But something felt off. Maybe it was the way her smile never quite reached her eyes, or how she'd change the subject whenever work came up. Still, I told myself I was just being an overprotective mother. "Mom, we're getting married," Tommy announced over dinner one evening. I remember forcing a smile and hugging them both, pushing down the nagging feeling in my gut. "I'm so happy for you both," I said, and I meant it. Or at least, I wanted to mean it. The wedding was small but lovely. I sat in the front row, watching my boy promise his life to this woman I barely knew. Robert was there too, with his new family, wife number 2, and their teenage twins. We nodded politely to each other but didn't speak. Everything seemed fine at first. They got an apartment across town, both working at the same tech startup. I'd have them over for dinner sometimes, watching how Amy would inspect everything in the house with those calculating eyes of hers. But I never imagined how quickly things would change, or that my peaceful life was about to be turned upside down. I was at work when I got the call from Tommy. His voice was shaking, and I could tell he'd been crying. "Mom, they're laying off half the company. Both Amy and I, we're being let go." My heart sank. I knew how hard it was to lose a job. I'd seen enough colleagues go through it over my years in marketing. "Take a deep breath, honey. Tell me what you need." "We won't be able to make next month's rent," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Our savings, they're pretty much gone." After some quick calculations, I transferred enough money to cover 3 months of rent for their apartment. It wasn't a small amount, but I had some savings, and this was my son. "This should give you both time to find new jobs," I told him. The weeks that followed were a mix of hope and disappointment. Tommy landed a new position at a smaller company, but the salary was significantly lower than what he'd been making before. Amy, on the other hand, well, I tried not to judge, but her job search seemed half-hearted at best. When I'd visit them, I'd often find her scrolling through social media instead of job listings. Then came another call from Tommy, just as the 3 months were coming to an end. "Mom, I hate to ask this, but is there any chance we could stay with you for a while? Just until things get better?" I looked around my big empty house, thinking of all the unused rooms. "Of course, honey. You know there's always space for you here." They arrived on a Sunday afternoon, their car packed with belongings. As I helped them carry boxes up to Tommy's old room, I couldn't help but notice Amy's eyes darting around the house, taking everything in with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "Caroline," she said, her voice syrupy sweet, "your room is just gorgeous. And that home office setup, it would be perfect for our workspace while we're job hunting. Maybe Tommy and I could take that room? It's bigger, and since there are 2 of us." "I'm sorry, Amy," I said firmly but politely, "but that's my personal space. I need my office for work, and I sometimes have to take calls late at night. Tommy's old room is quite spacious, and you'll have plenty of storage in the guest room across the hall." Her face fell, and though she didn't say anything, the look in her eyes sent a chill down my spine. She pursed her lips and turned away, dragging her suitcase up the stairs with more force than necessary. Tommy gave me an apologetic smile. "Thanks for this, Mom. We really appreciate it." Life settled into a new routine, or at least, that's what I tried to tell myself. Every morning, I'd get up at 6, make coffee, and head to work. Tommy would leave around the same time for his new job. And Amy, well, Amy would still be asleep. I tried not to think about it too much during those first few days. "She's probably still applying for jobs online," I told myself. But as the days went by, a pattern emerged that was impossible to ignore. Each evening when I returned from work, I'd find her exactly where she'd been that morning, sprawled on my living room couch, phone in hand, surrounded by empty snack bags and coffee mugs. The dishes from her lunch would be piled in the sink, crumbs scattered across my kitchen counter. "How was the job search today?" I'd ask, trying to keep my voice light. "Oh, nothing really suitable for my qualifications," she'd reply without looking up from her phone. 2 weeks passed like this. The house, which I'd always kept immaculate, was starting to show signs of neglect. Dust gathered on the furniture, dishes piled up, and laundry overflowed from the hampers. After a particularly long day at work, I decided it was time for a gentle conversation. We were sitting at dinner, a meal I'd prepared after cleaning the kitchen first. I cleared my throat nervously. "Amy, honey," I began, keeping my voice as gentle as possible, "I was thinking, since you're home during the day, maybe you could help out a bit with the housework? Just until you find a job, of course." The change in her expression was instant. Her fork clattered against the plate, and her eyes welled up with tears. "I knew it," she cried, turning to Tommy. "I knew she'd try to turn me into her maid. Just because I'm temporarily unemployed doesn't mean I should be your mother's servant." I sat there, stunned. Amy, that's not what You've been looking down on me since day one. She was full on sobbing now. You think I'm not good enough for your precious son or your precious house. Amy, please, I didn't mean, but she was already pushing back her chair, running from the table with dramatic flair. Tommy stood up, his face dark with anger. Mom, I can't believe you'd be so cruel to Amy. She's going through a really tough time right now. After that night, things got even worse. I still did all the cooking and cleaning, while they ordered takeout and left their empty containers wherever they finished eating. Out of habit, or maybe hope, I'd still call them to join me for dinner when I cooked. They'd come down, eat without a word, and leave their dirty dishes on the table. The weeks dragged by, each day feeling longer than the last. The sound of the TV from the living room had become a constant backdrop to my home life, along with the gentle tap-tap of Amy's fingers on her phone screen. I tried to stay out of her way, spending more time at the office than necessary, but the situation weighed heavily on my mind. One morning, during our weekly department meeting, our HR director mentioned they were looking for an office manager. My ears perked up immediately. What's the starting salary? I asked as casually as I could. $45,000 to start, she replied. But there's room for growth. We promote from within whenever possible. I thought about Amy's resume. She had a business degree and had worked in administration before. This could be perfect. I spent my lunch break drafting a careful text to Amy about the position, but then deleted it. This was the kind of news better delivered in person. I left work early that day, my heart light with hope. Maybe this could be the solution to our problems. I found Amy in her usual spot on the couch, scrolling through her phone. A half-eaten bag of chips lay on the coffee table, crumbs scattered across the surface. Amy, I said, trying to keep my voice bright and encouraging. I have some good news. There's an opening at my company for an office manager. It's entry-level, but there's real potential for advancement. The starting salary is decent, and I could drive you to work. We could commute together. She shot up from the couch, sending the chip bag flying. Are you serious right now? An office manager? Do you know what my qualifications are? I just thought. You thought what? That I'd be happy to fetch coffee and organize paper clips? Her voice was rising with each word. I have a business degree. I was a project coordinator. Amy, please, I didn't mean. Oh, I know exactly what you meant. She was practically shrieking now. You think I'm a freeloader. You think I'm lazy. You can't stand the fact that I'm not working, so you're trying to force me into some degrading position. Just then, Tommy walked through the front door, his timing impossibly bad. What's going on? He asked, looking between us. Amy rushed to him, tears streaming down her face. Your mother just insulted me again. She thinks I'm a freeloader. She's trying to force me to take some menial job as an office manager. I stood up, my hands shaking. Tommy, that's not true. I was just trying to help. There's an opening at my company, and I thought. Mom, stop. Tommy's voice cut through the room like a knife. Why do you always have to do this? Why can't you just leave Amy alone? Do what? I asked, genuinely confused. I'm just trying to help. Help? Amy scoffed through her tears. You're trying to humiliate me. She ran up the stairs, her dramatic sobs echoing through the house. Tommy gave me a look of pure disappointment. I never thought you could be so difficult to live with, Mom, he said, shaking his head. You're constantly starting drama. It's like you can't help yourself. He followed his wife upstairs, leaving me standing alone in the living room. I sank back into my chair, my half-finished coffee growing cold in my hands. Starting drama? I whispered to myself, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. In all my 62 years, no one had ever accused me of being dramatic. The days turned into weeks, and I learned to keep my mouth shut about the job situation. The mere mention of work would make Amy's eyes narrow dangerously, so I stopped bringing it up altogether. It was easier that way, even if it meant watching her waste her days away on my couch. Things changed when Tommy got his first big commission at work. Suddenly, Amy was going out more often, returning with shopping bags from expensive boutiques and fresh manicures that probably cost more than our weekly grocery bill. Not once did she think to pick up laundry detergent or paper towels. Those mundane household items remained my responsibility. I kept hoping that with Tommy's improved income, they'd start looking for their own place. Each morning, I'd check the local rental listings on my phone, imagining them finding a nice apartment across town. But they seemed perfectly content to stay put, making themselves more and more at home in my house. One evening, I came home to find Amy excitedly chatting on her phone in my living room. "Oh my God, yes, the house is absolutely perfect for a party," she was saying. "You should see the vintage chandelier in the dining room. It'll look amazing in photos." I set down my briefcase, my stomach already nodding. "What party?" She hung up and turned to Tommy, who had just walked in. "Babe, we should definitely have our anniversary party here. Can you believe it's been almost 2 years? Where exactly are you planning to have this party?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Here, of course." Amy gestured around my living room. "This house is gorgeous, Caroline. All our friends will love it. I'm thinking we could set up the bar in the foyer, and maybe move some furniture around in the living room to create a dance floor." "Shouldn't you have asked me first?" I interrupted, trying to keep my voice level. But Amy was already scrolling through her phone. "We should invite the Hendersons, and maybe that new couple from your office, Tommy. Oh, and we absolutely need to call that catering company we used for New Year's." I turned to Tommy, hoping he'd say something, but he was nodding along with his wife's plans, a smile on his face. Later that evening, I cornered Tommy in the kitchen. "Mom, I know what you're going to say," he started, "but it would mean so much to Amy. She's been feeling down lately, and this would really lift her spirits." "This is my house, Tommy. You can't just decide to throw a party here without asking me first." "Please, Mom?" He gave me that look, the same one he used to give me when he wanted extra dessert as a child. "I promise we'll take care of everything. I'll even hire a cleaning service to come in afterward. You won't have to lift a finger." I stood there, looking at my son, this man who used to be the considerate boy I raised, and felt my resolve crumbling. "Fine," I sighed, already knowing I'd regret this decision. "But I want everything back in its proper place afterward." "Thanks, Mom. You're the best." He hugged me quickly and bounded up the stairs to tell Amy the good news. The week leading up to the party was a whirlwind of activity, none of which I was included in. Amy took over my house like a general, planning a military campaign. Delivery trucks came and went, bringing everything from fancy tablecloths to crystal champagne flutes. She rearranged my furniture without asking, pushing my favorite reading chair into a corner to make room for a makeshift dance floor. I kept my distance, retreating to my office whenever possible. Still, I couldn't help but overhear her endless phone conversations about appetizer selections and wine choices. My grandmother's antique vase was moved to make room for elaborate flower arrangements, and my family photos were taken down to be replaced with string lights and paper lanterns. Friday afternoon, I left work early. I had even bought a new dress for the occasion, nothing too fancy, just a simple navy blue cocktail dress that I thought would be appropriate. As I pulled into my driveway, I could see cars already lining the street. I took a deep breath and walked up to my own front door. Inside, the house was barely recognizable. The furniture had been pushed against the walls, creating an open space in the center where people were already dancing. The air was thick with the smell of catering food and expensive perfume. Amy spotted me from across the room. She was wearing a short silver dress that caught the light from the newly installed party lights, her hair and makeup professionally done. She excused herself from the group she was talking to and walked over to me, her face fixed in an artificial smile. "Caroline," she said, her voice sickly sweet but loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "I thought you'd be gone by now." I blinked in confusion. "Gone? Why would I be gone?" "Oh, She tilted her head, her smile never wavering. I guess I forgot to mention, this party is really just for our friends. You know, young people? I assumed you'd make other arrangements for the evening. Maybe get a hotel room? I stood there, stunned, as a few of her friends nearby giggled into their champagne glasses. This is my house, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Yes, and you've been so generous letting us use it, Amy said, patting my arm condescendingly. But you have to understand, having someone's mom at an anniversary party is kind of a buzzkill. I looked past her to Tommy, who was standing nearby, watching this exchange. Surely he wouldn't allow this. Surely he would step in and defend me. Mom, he said, walking over. Amy's right. This is really more of a young people's party. It might be better if you weren't here. In that moment, something inside me, something that had been stretching thinner and thinner over the past months, finally snapped. Without a word, I turned and walked up the stairs. Behind me, I could hear Amy's smug voice. See? I knew she'd be reasonable about this. She's probably just gone to pack an overnight bag. I entered Tommy's old room, their room now, and pulled their suitcases from under the bed. My hands were steady as I began emptying drawers, folding nothing, just throwing their clothes into the bags. Designer dresses, expensive suits, all the things they'd bought with Tommy's new salary, into the suitcases they went. I stripped the bed, wrapped their toiletries in a towel, and added those too. The music thumped below as I dragged the heavy suitcases down the stairs, one in each hand. The sound of them bumping against each step drew everyone's attention. The crowd parted as I entered the living room, faces turning from their conversations to watch the scene unfold. Mom? Tommy's voice cracked. What are you doing? I dropped the suitcases in the middle of the makeshift dance floor. You're leaving, now. The party's over. Amy's face contorted with rage. What the hell do you think you're doing? She screamed. You can't do this. This is my house, I said, my voice deadly calm. You have exactly 5 minutes to leave before I call the police and have you removed for trespassing. Mom, come on, Tommy laughed nervously. You're joking, right? I pulled out my phone. 4 minutes. The guests began shuffling toward the door, muttering among themselves. Some were already calling Ubers. You deranged old fool. Amy stepped toward me, her finger pointed at my face. I moved so quickly it surprised even me, closing the distance between us until we were nose to nose. Call me one more name, I said, my voice low and dangerous, and I'll show you exactly how much fight this old fool has left in her. Try me. The color drained from Amy's face. She stumbled backward, grabbing the nearest suitcase. Tommy stood frozen for a moment before reaching for the second bag. Mom, he started. Get out. They walked to the door, Amy still muttering curses under her breath. Tommy looked back once, but I had already turned away, beginning to take down the tacky decorations they'd hung on my walls. After they left, I surveyed the abandoned party scene, tables loaded with untouched food, half-empty champagne glasses scattered everywhere, my grandmother's vase thankfully still intact. I began boxing up the catering trays. The local homeless shelter was still open, at least some good could come from all this food. The weeks after the party passed quietly. Too quietly, perhaps. But after months of chaos, the silence in my house felt like a blessing. I put everything back in its proper place, my reading chair returned to its spot by the window, my family photos back on the walls, my grandmother's vase centerpiece on the dining room table. News travels fast in small towns. Sarah, my friend who works in real estate, told me Tommy and Amy had rented a 2-bedroom apartment in the new complex across town. Funny thing, she said over coffee one morning, Janet from the leasing office is an old friend. Says they almost didn't pass the credit check, but Tommy's new salary just barely got them approved. I sipped my coffee and said nothing. More stories trickled in. Martha, whose niece lives in the same building, reported that the property manager had already given them 2 warnings about the state of their apartment during routine inspections. The place is a mess, Martha confided, shaking her head. Garbage piling up, dishes in the sink for days. Sound familiar? I just nodded, remembering my own kitchen during their stay. Then came word of the arguments. They weren't exactly subtle about it. The neighbors could hear them through the walls, Amy screaming about Tommy's pathetic salary, how she was sick of living in a dump, how none of her friends had to live like this. Tommy firing back about her refusing to work, to cook, to clean, to do anything at all really. They say she throws things sometimes, my friend Linda whispered during our weekly lunch. Tommy was seen sleeping in his car one night last week. Each story made my heart ache a little. Not for Amy, I was done wasting sympathy on her. But for Tommy, he was still my son, despite everything. Sometimes I pick up the phone, my finger hovering over his number, but I always put it down again. This is his lesson to learn, his path to walk. The house feels different now. Peaceful, yes, but also waiting. Like it knows this isn't the end of the story. Some nights, as I sit in my reading chair with a cup of tea, I look at the photos on the wall, Tommy's graduation, his first baseball game, the two of us at the beach when he was 10. I remember the little boy who used to run to me with skinned knees and broken toys, trusting that mom could fix anything. But I can't fix this for him. He needs to see it for himself, to understand what he's become and find his way back to being the person I raised him to be. Until then, I'll be here in our family home, keeping his room ready, just in case. Not for Amy, that bridge is well and truly burned. But for my son, when he's ready to apologize, to talk, to rebuild. In the meantime, I'm reclaiming my life. I joined a book club, started taking painting classes on weekends, and even adopted a cat from the local shelter. His name is Oliver, and he's excellent company. He sits with me in the evenings, purring contentedly as I read, neither of us feeling the need to fill the silence with empty words. Life goes on, as it always does. And when Tommy's ready, he'll know where to find me.